Chapter 1209. Everyone agreed that only this god of wealth had the ability and the channels to gather all the things needed for the war in the shortest time possible. If everyone got into a mess and went about their own business, it would delay the progress of the preparations, and the losses would outweigh the gains. Tang Yuan did not pass on this responsibility and did not even try to be humble. At this time, if he still wanted to be a busybody, it would only delay the progress of the task, and he would only tire himself out. This is what I do. All of you, compared to me, are not even considered amateurs. Tang Yuan immediately started his own work. With this hand, silver came in like a river, and with that hand, silver went out like the sea. Many years later, someone would calculate the amount of money that Tang Yuan had spent in this period of time, and in the end, those so-called gods of wealth would feel inferior. The amount of money that Tang Yuan had spent in these few months was enough to support 2 superpowers for 10 years. It could not be calculated in terms of taels. Almost everyone in the entire continent was in a state of excitement. Between all the great families, whether they had conflicts, connections, enmity, or even grudges between them at this moment, they all put aside their former enmity and worked together. Everything was for this battle. Regardless of whether their wives were stolen or their sons were killed, in the face of the safety of the continent and the survival of the human race, personal honor and disgrace were no longer important. The entire Xian continent, in this sudden crisis, actually united like never before. All of their strength was directed towards the same place. The unity of the people, the unity of will. Whether they were originally noble, despicable, hateful, or hateful, as long as they were on this continent, everyone was shouting and working hard for the same goal. Fighting against the strange races. Just like what Jun Moxie had said, if you want the world to be at peace, you must make everyone feel pressure and fear. Only by fighting against the outside world is the best way to unite people's hearts. Only under such circumstances, this continent would truly be the most adorable continent. And after such an incident, as long as there were no special accidents, the entire continent's adorableness would last for a very long time. The housekeeper of Guan Qinghan's maiden family had also mobilized all the members of his family to fight at the same time. The continent was in an uproar. Everyone came from all directions. Large troops, small troops, and even scattered Jianghu heroes. At this moment, countless heads gathered to form a trickling stream. It was like 100 rivers converging into the sea, advancing towards the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. At this moment, the Pillar of Heaven's mountains had shockingly become the core of the entire continent. The undisputed focal point. It was like an abnormally huge magnet, attracting everyone to rush over at the fastest speed, regardless of the cost. Even if the price of rushing over was his own life, he would not turn back. At this moment, the area where the Pillar of Heaven's mountains used to be was now a sea of blood. At the front of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer had already taken turns to defend it 3 times. The warriors of Tian Fa had already been rotated thrice. The elite forces of the 3 Holy Lands also attacked 3 times. Now, almost everyone in the tens of thousands of mainland allied army was injured. But the attacks from the outsiders were still surging over like raging waves. Whether it was the morning light, the blazing sun, or the evening wind, or the frost and snow of the night, they did not stop. Countless malevolent faces waved the weapons in their hands with all their might, stepping on the corpses and blood of their own people as they charged over. No matter who it was, the moment they stepped on them, blood would spurt out like a fountain. No matter who it was, the moment they stepped on them, the blood beneath their feet would spurt out like a fountain. The blood mist in the sky was so thick that it was like dark clouds pressing down on a city. Every breath made one's throat feel a little wet from the blood. The entire battlefield seemed to have descended into complete madness. Heads could be seen flying everywhere, as if tens of thousands of watermelons had been dumped here at the same time. A hand that was still crazily slashing with a saber a moment ago had already fallen to the ground, trampled into meat paste by the enemy or their own people in the next moment. A mouth that was still roaring crazily a moment ago had already been trampled into a pool of blood and meat the next moment. The frenzied battle that had almost gone out of control continued, as if there would never be an end to it. The sound of self-destruction came from every direction at every moment, and it was continuous and intense. It was like the people of the entire country setting off firecrackers on New Year's Eve. But the firecrackers were set off to celebrate the arrival of the new year. Right now, the loud explosions were a symbol of countless bloody massacres. Every explosion meant that a few, or even tens of people had stepped onto the road to the Yellow Springs at the same time, forming a series of loud explosions. Every minute and every second, there were countless experts self-detonating. Even the so-called experts might not be able to unleash their profound Xian skills in such a special situation. They had to use their last resort. Many of them were even treated as one-time use bombs. And in such a dangerous situation, there were even more unlucky fellows who didn't even have the time to self-detonate before they were chopped down by the sabers and turned into meat paste, rotting in the ground and dissolving into the sea of blood. Under such a frenzied attack, even the powerful Tian Fa warriors and Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer troops were unable to retaliate. Every time they managed to advance, they would be smashed back by the strange races using their own bodies and self-detonations. Most of the time, they could only defend passively, but no matter which troop it was, no matter how elite they were, they could only hold on for half an hour at most before suffering a considerable number of casualties. If they didn't change out after half an hour, they might face the danger of being completely wiped out. Whether it was Tian Fa Evil Monarch Manor, or the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer troops, they were all no exception. The battle had come so suddenly, but the degree of devastation had far exceeded everyone's imagination. Even if tens of thousands of people used their brains at the same time, and tens of thousands of divine artists waved their brushes at the same time, they definitely wouldn't be able to depict the intensity of this battle. Mei Xuan was dressed in a snow-white robe as she stood high up in the air, hurriedly sending out all sorts of battle orders. For a whole 3 days and 3 nights, she didn't move at all. She only gave out orders, and her mouth didn't stop for even a second. Right now, Mei Xuan's brain was constantly working at high speed. Even with her Saint Monarch cultivation and mental endurance, her mouth was already covered in blisters, and her eyes were bloodshot. She didn't dare to, and couldn't afford to slack off for even the slightest bit. Because in the time it took for her to blink, tens of her own soldiers might be sacrificed because they didn't have the time to react, losing their lives. Mei Xuan was working so hard, but what about Jun Moxie? Jun Dashao was currently in the world of the Hongjun Pagoda. Don't misunderstand that Jun Dashao was so carefree, actually hiding by himself. In fact, the hard work that Jun Moxie had put in was definitely not any less than Mei Xuan. In fact, it was several times more. Before the battle, Jun Moxie had stored a huge amount of iron in the space of the Hongjun Pagoda. Right now, they were playing a huge role. The power of metal, as if it didn't care about its own life, was being refined at a high speed. Countless high-quality weapons seemed to converge into a long metal river, continuously appearing in front of him, and then disappearing, turning into the sharp weapons of every soldier on the battlefield. All the weapons, no matter how hard they were, would turn into scrap metal after an hour of crazily hacking on the battlefield, even if they were divine weapons tempered by the power of metal. Every minute, every second, every attack of every weapon had almost reached the limit of what they would normally do when they were sparring with each other. When a blade was swung out, even if it was an unconscious slash, there would be a series of clanging sounds. Because such an unconscious slash would at least collide with 5 or 6 blades in front of it. Following that, there would be more and more blades slashing at it. Even for the soldiers who had reached the level of the Holy Emperor, there were many who had their hands cut off, and their perlicus bleeding as they retreated. On the other side, the number 1 expert of the strange races, Sasho Kidima, had disheveled hair, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked like a hungry wolf, constantly ordering, "Go! Go! All of you, even if you have to die, you must all die in that place." At this moment, the order was no longer charge, but die. That was the order. Yes, I'm ordering all of you to die. Your only mission is to die on this battlefield. Die in front of the Xian continent's human army. Don't worry about whether you can break through or not. Your mission is to unleash your full strength, and after that, die there. There is no need for you to have any hope of survival. But even such an order, the strange races did not hesitate at all. They still carried out the order faithfully without blinking. Howling madly, they charged forward, using all the strength in their bodies, just to use their blades to clash with the enemy's weapons, and then be killed. Just like that, they charged forward wave after wave, charging to their deaths. The fastest was a troop of 1,000 strange races soldiers. After they charged forward, the following troops followed closely behind, practically sticking close to their heels. These 1,000 people had already been turned into meat paste. Not even a single corpse was left intact. 3 days and 3 nights, the most conservative estimate was that the strange races had already lost over 300,000 soldiers on this land. Towards the end, everyone was fighting on corpses and not on the ground. The thick ground could no longer be stepped on. Chapter 12:10. As the saying goes, those who were used to seeing death and death in the pugilistic world, the number of deaths that 10 or 100 people had seen in 10 lifetimes might not even compare to the number of deaths that they had seen in this 1 hour. Towards the end, everyone had already sunk into a state of numbness. Apart from killing and being killed, there were basically no other thoughts that could arise in such a situation. Everyone's hearts also began to harden bit by bit, becoming harder and harder. At the start, when they saw their comrades suddenly being killed or self-destructed because they were in a desperate situation, all of them shed tears of grief. But now, even if their own comrades fell in front of their eyes and were chopped into meat paste, they did not feel the slightest bit moved. This was very normal. Perhaps in the next moment, it will be my turn. The one who will turn into meat paste will be me. If I use extreme methods like self-destructing, there won't even be any residue left. In the end, we will still be reunited. Perhaps in the blink of an eye. Is there a need to be so reluctant and heartbroken? Everyone who worshipped individual strength would immediately repent the moment they entered such an atmosphere of war. In such a situation, individual strength was just a joke that was not funny at all. Even a saint-level super expert would be exhausted to death in such a situation. Heaven Destroyer Division. Retreat. Tiger King, bring the 3rd team of the Tiger Tribe and go up. Mei Shuiyan's originally clear but now hoarse voice rang out once again. The solitary falcon swung his blade one last time, but he wasn't sure if his last attack had killed the enemy, or if it had caused any damage, so he raised his arms and roared, "Brothers, let's go all out. Retreat at full speed." Amidst the loud roars, hundreds of saw-toothed weapons slashed out at the same time. The outsiders were instantly thrown off their feet, and fresh blood flowed everywhere. The sharp blades in the hands of the Heaven Destroyer warriors were also shattered by the violent impact of this final strike. The Heaven Destroyer warriors did not even look back after that attack and retreated quickly. In just 3 steps, Tiger King Earthcracker had already squeezed past them and charged forward. The Tiger Tribe warriors roared and instantly took over the Heaven Destroyer warriors' original defensive line. However, in such a short period of time, the outsiders had already taken 2 steps forward. Push the defensive line 1 step further. First Squad of the Bear Tribe, retreat. Soul Devour Division, go. Mei Shuiyan's hoarse voice sounded as if she was about to spit out blood. With a loud roar, Bear Mountain swung the giant blade in his hand. All the warriors of the Bear Tribe roared at the same time and took 3 steps back. Behind him, a snow-white saber light suddenly swept over like a rising tide on the horizon. Feng Wan-yun led the Spirit Devourer troops and had already pierced through, nailing the Bear Tribe's original position. The outsiders did not care about the price, did not care about the sacrifices. Like raging waves, each wave higher than the last, the Spirit Devourer unit members were all bathed in blood, but they did not retreat an inch, like a reef hidden under the sea, unmoving. With a loud roar, Jun Moxie once again threw down the mountain of refined weapons. The iron mine in the Hongjun Pagoda had been completely used up. Even the gold, silver, copper, iron, and all the other metals in the space had been completely refined. Not even a single scrap of metal was left. Following that, Jun Moxie himself flew to Mei Shuiyan's side. Without any explanation, a huge amount of spiritual qi had already turned into water, drenching Mei Shuiyin from head to toe. At the same time, a stream of spiritual qi spring quietly entered Mei Shuiyin's mouth. Mei Shuiyin continued to give orders through voice transmissions. The 35,000 Tian Fa warriors were divided into 3 waves of 35 squads. They had to be rotated almost every second. In these 3 days and nights, they did not even have the time to drink water. It was easy to imagine how intense the battle was. In fact, this was the only way she could slightly relieve her fatigue. However, with this delay, a dozen or so warriors of the crane race who were about to give the order to retreat had their weapons shattered before they could do so. Then, they were drowned in the crowd of the mutated race. Then, a dozen or so violent explosions sounded from that location, clearing a whole area in an instant. But in the blink of an eye, this gap was filled by the outsiders. Crane tribe, retreat. Wolf tribe, 5th squad. Mei Shuiyin hurriedly gave the order, her eyes red. There were only 4 people who had not made a move yet: Mei Shuin, Jun Moxie, Gu Han, and 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Mei Shuiyin needed to oversee the entire situation. Even if there was a chance to make a move, it would not be her turn. But the reason why the other 3 did not make a move was because none of the supremacy enduring heavens from the outsiders' side had made a move. Even the experts of the Frenzy Blade enduring Earth's level were very few. Other than the commander who had to lead the charge, the other experts of the outsiders did not make a move at all. There must be some kind of conspiracy hidden in this. Or perhaps they were waiting for the continent's troops to be completely exhausted before they made their move. Therefore, none of these 3 people dared to act rashly. Jun Emoxie and Mei Shuiyin only used their eyes to communicate for a moment. They didn't even have time to say a word before they separated. Jun Moxie leaped up and stood in the air. He took over the position of 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters looked at him with a slight smile in her eyes. Jun Moxie's powerful spiritual sense quickly spread out, covering the entire sky in an instant. It covered at least a few hundred li of space. Then, following the guidance of his spiritual sense, he quickly found the location of Sasho Kitajima. This fellow was waving his arms and legs with a vicious look on his face as he gave all kinds of orders. Beside him, there were constantly generals of the outsiders following his orders. Following that, there was a group of 10,000 people rushing over like a pack of wolves. Behind Sasho Kitajima, there was still a black mass of troops that did not make a single move. It was silent, like a silent demon in the dark night, waiting for the time to come to choose its prey. That group of a few thousand people should be the peak experts of the outsiders. Jun Moxie took in a deep breath and said, "Wrong. That's not just a few thousand people, but a total of 23,500 elites." The 9 Nether 14th Young Master said indifferently, "The ones standing behind that fellow are only a portion, not even a third of the total. As for the 2 largest groups, they are waiting on the left and right side of the battlefield." Jun Moxie carefully sensed for a moment, and it was indeed the case. But what really surprised Jun Dashao was that with 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' arrogant personality, he actually counted the number of experts on the other side so clearly. What are the specific strengths of these people? Jun Moxie asked humbly. Very strong. The 9 Nether 14th Young Master's eyes were unusually serious. There aren't many Saint Monarchs, only 15 of them. At least 10 of them are only at the first level of Saint Monarch. But there are more Saint Venerable experts, numbering in the hundreds. As for the rest, they are all Saint Emperors. And all of them have the strength of a Holy Emperor level 2 or above. It is obvious that the minimum requirement to enter this elite army is to be a Holy Emperor level 2. What? Jun Emoxie was shocked. You didn't see it wrong, right? How can there be so many peak experts on the side of the outsiders? If they really have such strength, why bother with the war for seizing the heavens? They would have razed the 3 holy lands to the ground long ago. My judgment can't be wrong. Although there are at least second-level Saint Kings among the 23,500 people, at least half of them have unstable auras. They have no room for improvement at all. Also, Many of their Xian Qi is abnormally violent, and they are showing signs of weakness. If they really fight, an ordinary level 2 Holy Emperor would be able to defeat at least 6 or 7 of these unstable fake experts. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters said indifferently, I think that these people are the biggest cannon fodder. Because it is obvious that they used some kind of special secret technique to forcefully raise their strength without caring about the consequences of harming the human body. And among these cannon fodder, there are more than 40 who have already raised their cultivation to the Saint Venerable level. The rest are basically all level 2 or 3 Holy Emperor level. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters looked at Jun Moxie and said, among these people, there are 11,900 of them. There is only despair in their eyes, and there is no hope in their hearts. Clearly, dying in battle here is the last and greatest goal of their lives. Their method of attack should be to self-destruct. A total of 11,900 Holy Emperor level cannon fodder? Jun Moxie was shocked. If all these people self-destructed, then the result, cold sweat appeared on Jun Moxie's forehead. No matter how unstable these people's cultivation was, they still had the strength of a Holy Emperor level 2. Once they self-destructed, they would be able to unleash even more power. Such a shocking amount of power was enough to drag all of Tian Fa's forces to the grave with them. Looks like these strange races have really gone crazy. To actually be willing to pay such a huge price. If you go up against these people, what will the result be? Jun Moxie asked. Before I run out of energy, I can kill at least 3,000 of them. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters looked at him and said, of course, this is under the condition that I use the divine melody to support me. Furthermore, they still have to maintain their passion for battle today. If they have the intention to retreat, they might not even be able to reach half of their numbers. Jun Moxie rubbed his temples and furrowed his brows as he thought about what he should do this time. If they really charge forward and use the tactic of self-destruction, in your opinion, how should we deal with it? Jun Moxie asked sincerely. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters thought about it carefully and said, there is only one way, retreat. That is the only way to preserve our strength. What if we don't retreat? Jun Moxie's eyes lit up. Retreat is definitely not a viable option. If you insist, there might be a way to cause them huge losses. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters looked at Jun Moxie and said, but we need to cooperate wholeheartedly to have a chance. Chapter 12:11. How exactly are we going to work together? Tell me quickly. Jun Moxie's spirit was lifted. He had already thought of dozens of countermeasures, but he felt that none of them would be useful. Even if they were effective, they would not be able to deal a heavy blow to a super force of over 20,000 people. The basis of this method is that black flame of yours. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had a profound look in his eyes. That's not appropriate. That thing can burn anything and is unstoppable, but its movement speed is too slow. Even if it's only a few feet high, once it falls, with the strength of these strange races, they will be able to fly a few miles away from their original position. Jun Moxie did not support 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' suggestion. Of course, Jun Dashao wanted to use the flame of primordial chaos to kill the enemy in one fell swoop. If he could make a big hole like he did with Xia Chang Tian and the rest, then use the flame of primordial chaos to burn their souls. But the actual situation did not allow for this. Firstly, his power of earth and flame of primordial chaos were far from being able to cover such a large area. Even with the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, it would not be possible. Secondly, if he used the power of the Hongjun Pagoda again, he would not be able to help for at least a day. If he could not help for an entire day, how could he not help at such a crucial moment as the soul of the army? Jun Moxie didn't even dare to think about what kind of disastrous consequences that would result. Thirdly, even with the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, it would not be able to increase the speed of the flame of primordial chaos. If he could not move due to overexertion, but did not cause too much damage to the enemy, then he would really be a fool. You've misunderstood me. My idea is for you to do your best to scatter that flame, then I will use the divine melody to play a 1,000-mile soul-chasing sword. I will use my soul power to speed up the speed of your flame, so that the strange flame will descend quickly when their formation is concentrated. In this way, it will definitely cause a lot of damage to the strange races. If we are lucky, we might be able to destroy 80 to 90% of their fighting strength. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters said indifferently, "Of course, the prerequisite for this to happen is that you have to let my netherworld power temporarily gain the recognition of that flame." He squinted his eyes and said, "I can see that this kind of flame has its own spirituality. If it doesn't get its acknowledgement, even I can't do anything about it." June Moxie let out a bitter laugh and thought to himself, "You're really accurate. The method you mentioned is indeed the most feasible method at present." June Moxie made a prompt decision and confirmed the plan. "Later, you will transfer your unique netherworld true chi into my body. I will control it and obtain the flame's approval." They really couldn't delay any longer. If they delayed any longer, once the Allied forces fell into a state of exhaustion, the other party would begin an all-out attack, and it would be too late to do this. However, the implementation plan proposed by Jun Dashao shocked 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Just what sort of person was this evil monarch? Did he even have the slightest bit of vigilance against others? One had to know, transferring the so-called netherworld true chi into Jun Moxie's body was a simple matter. But if Jun Moxie really allowed the netherworld true chi to enter his body without any defense, then it would be equivalent to Jun Moxie placing his life in the hands of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, allowing him to do whatever he wanted. Doing whatever he wanted to do was even more thorough than being the meat on the chopping block. At that time, the 9 Nether 14 Masters wouldn't need to spend much effort. With just a thought, even if the evil monarch, Jun Moxie, had great abilities, he wouldn't be able to escape the tragic fate of having his soul destroyed. But at the last sentence, after the netherworld true chi entered Jun Dashao's body, only by giving up all resistance would this external force be able to accept Jun Moxie's full control. This meant that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had given up all defenses and placed his life, cultivation in the hands of Jun Moxie. As long as Jun Moxie willed it, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters would be doomed. Although it looked like a simple circulation of true chi, it was actually related to the lives of 2 unparalleled experts. During this process, no matter which side had the slightest evil thought, the other side would definitely die. Actually, Jun Moxie was very clear about the stakes involved in this. But under such circumstances, Jun Dashao was also helpless. If he wanted the flame of primal chaos to accept external force, he had to go through this process. Although the flame of primal chaos was not as human-like as the blood of yellow flame, and could not think or speak, it still had its own spirituality and had its own distinguishing ability. Accepting the control of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was the nature of this flame, or rather, it was a kind of instinct. But if it was controlled by another force, it would definitely cause a violent backlash. This was also a kind of instinct. Even if it was only a temporary control that could be removed immediately after completion, it would not do. As long as there was a little carelessness, the netherworld true chi of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters would be completely incinerated. If that was the case, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters would really be in a tragedy. Even if it was the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, even if it was the netherworld first young master's unique netherworld true chi, they would definitely not be able to deal with the flame of primal chaos. Jun Moxie raised his head after saying this. At this moment, the 9 Nether 14th young master's gaze also happened to look over. Their eyes met, and they could see the struggle in the depths of the other's heart. What was a strong person? A strong person had to have absolute autonomy. This point, especially when it came to their own safety and personal freedom, was something that there was absolutely no room for negotiation, because this was what they pursued the most in their lives. No strong person would be willing to put their life in the hands of others and do things that others could do to them. Even if that person was their parents, brothers, or close relatives, it was still not acceptable. But right now, this concerned the overall situation of the world, forcing these 2 strong people to this stage. And the most ironic thing was that the two people who were forced to this stage were actually two people who were completely indifferent to the so-called safety of the world. Jun Moxie never had any obligation to the world, and he would never make sacrifices for the world. As for the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, they did not have any good impression of the so-called world. In fact, in their hearts, they did not even have the concept of the world. What world? What does it have to do with me? But right now, these two people were using their own lives as a wager to test the waters. And they had no choice but to do it. If this matter was told to young Master June or the 9 Nether 14th young Master beforehand, saying that they would hesitate because of this, the two of them would definitely scoff at it. The safety of the continent? What does these things have to do with me? Even at this moment, Jun Dashao still did not want to do this. But he understood that if he did not act decisively now, the strange races would use the advantage of this suicide squad to tear apart the Xian continent's defense. There would no longer be any suspense in the battle. Not to mention how much Jun Moxie hated the strange races. Even if he did not hate them, he would not be able to bear it. Because the people fighting behind him, bathed in blood, were Jun Moxie's brothers and lovers. Once the strange races broke through, they would have to step over the corpses of these people to break through. Jun Moxie could not care less about the world, he could not care less about the safety of the continent, but he could not care less about them. On the contrary, he cared a lot. So he had to do it. But did the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters have a reason to do this? Two people, for eyes quietly stared at each other, both unblinking. "You're afraid?" A strange smile appeared on Jun Moxie's face as he said slowly. Or perhaps, the number 1 expert of the continent, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, is afraid that I can kill him with a single thought. In a single night, the name of the evil monarch will replace the name of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, and become the most shocking legend of the Xian continent. Your life will become the cornerstone of my unparalleled reputation. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters smiled strangely and said darkly, "That's right, what you said is very reasonable. But before that possibility happens, or if this young master makes the first move, then the number 1 genius in the past 10,000 years, the one who has the qualifications to threaten this young master, will perish with a single thought of mine. Your cultivation speed is simply too shocking. If you're given time, you only need a little more time, and you will definitely surpass me. This is not something unexpected, and one day in the future, I might even die in your hands. Right now, as long as I think about it, I can eliminate a future great enemy. Do you think I won't do it?" The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters said sinisterly. His body leaned forward slightly and made an extremely oppressive gesture. "Are you afraid?" The two of them continued to stare at each other, their eyes as cold and emotionless as ice. But in the next moment, the two of them suddenly burst into laughter. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters laughed heartily, which was rare for them, while Jun Moxie also laughed heartily. Did the thoughts that Jun Moxie spoke of really exist in his heart? It was undeniable that such a thought had flashed through Jun Moxie's heart. If he could kill the 9 Nether 14th young master without any effort, without paying any price, how great of an honor would that be? How great would that be? Moreover, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was arrogant and unruly. He was like a sharp sword hanging over his head. No one knew when he would go crazy, and he would slash down without any fear. And the moment he went crazy, in this world, only 3 out of 5 fingers would be able to escape from the 9 Nether 14th young master's hands. Was the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters telling the truth? Did he really have such thoughts? Similarly, it was undeniable that what the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters said was also the truth. He really had such thoughts. Chapter 12:12. At that time, the life of 9 Serenities and 14 Masters would also be in the hands of Jun Moxie. If Jun Moxie wanted to kill him, it would only take him a few years of cultivation to do so. To 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, Jun Moxie was the biggest threat in the entire world. The rest of the people were nothing to worry about. Even if it was a monstrous existence like Zhang Kuang, 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was confident that they would not be at a disadvantage against him. In fact, if Zhang Kuang did not fuse with the 9 Illusory Quicksand, the two of them would only have a 50-50 chance of winning in a life-and-death battle. Only Jun Moxie was an exception. Jun Dashao's speed of leveling up was like a rocket, causing all the strong people in the world to tremble. With such a shocking speed of improvement, it was not difficult to surpass 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, and it would not take too much time either. In fact, 9 Serenities and 14 Masters could already roughly calculate how many days it would take for Jun Moxie to surpass them. Facing such a huge threat, 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was not a narrow-minded person, so why wouldn't they want to get rid of him as soon as possible? But the two of them had said it at the same time, the deepest thoughts buried in their hearts, the most urgent thoughts that they wanted to implement, and also the most despicable and shameless thoughts. When their eyes met just now, it was these two people who were fighting a life-and-death battle with their despicable selves. To do it or not to do it? Fortunately, in this battle with their most despicable selves, these two people were the victors. The moment they said it, they felt an extreme sense of relief from the bottom of their hearts. The moment Jun Moxie revealed his thoughts, he felt as if a door that was originally sealed in his heart had suddenly opened. His entire body was extremely relaxed, as if he wanted to fly. His mind was exceptionally clear, and even his horizons and heart had been broadened. At this moment, Jun Moxie suddenly had a heartfelt realization. Perhaps another breakthrough was coming soon. Before the battle, during the battle, or after the battle. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters also had a similar feeling. He could clearly sense that the Hades seal in his mind had loosened a lot. Compared to before, his mental state had taken a huge leap forward. At this moment, the seal that was originally as strong as an iron wall seemed to have become a thin barrier that was as thin as a piece of white paper. As long as he calmed his heart and comprehended it, he would be able to break through in one go. Because they had all defeated themselves, defeated their inner demons. The experts of the past could defeat almost everyone, but the only one they couldn't defeat was themselves. The moment he defeated himself would be the moment he became a Buddha. Because he was his greatest enemy, and at the same time, the most difficult opponent to defeat. In this world, there was no enemy more difficult to deal with than this one. This trial was where the real trial lay. Once they passed the stage, no matter if it was Jun Moxie or the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, they would have no more obstacles in their future cultivation. So, you can break through like this? The two of them said the same thing almost at the same time. Then, their eyes met again and they smiled at each other. What a nice smile. The two of them had the same thought in their minds. Then, Jun Moxie's eyes widened. At this moment, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had removed the layer of Hades fog that had been covering his face, revealing his original appearance. His figure was tall, and his hair was as black as ink. His face was thin, and his eyes were long and narrow. His lips were thin and slightly pursed, giving off a cruel and aloof feeling. But the most eye-catching thing was still the 9 Nether 14th young master's eyes. That pair of eyes was almost as deep and colorful as a boundless thousand world. Although they were also a pair of black pupils, they could make people involuntarily get lost in them. It was as if there was another universe inside, vast and boundless. This face also gave off a very strange feeling. If one said that he was 20 years old, people would believe it. If one said that he was 30 years old, it would not be wrong. However, if one said that he was 60 years old, no one would make a fuss. Even those who had never cultivated before would believe it without reason when they saw this face. It would not be strange even if such a person had lived for 10,000 years. Boy, you're really not bad. You've allowed me, for the first and only time in my life, to taste the word trust. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters smiled coldly and said, "It turns out that this feeling can make people feel very comfortable. And I even took this opportunity to go through an inner demon." Jun Moxie smiled and said, "Actually, you're quite good-looking. Why do you always cover yourself up?" Since ancient times, beauties often lead unlucky lives. Women are the most sentimental in the world. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters said seriously, "It's because I'm good-looking that I have to cover myself up." He said rather desolately, "I've already dedicated my whole life to martial arts. How would I have so much time to waste on relationships?" June Moxie was stunned. He wanted to laugh, but he could not. He did not want to laugh, but it was really uncomfortable to hold it in. This was not narcissism. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was undoubtedly speaking the truth. June Moxie was confident that he could see this. With the 9 Nether 14th Young Master's profound cultivation, vast knowledge, and outstanding looks, if he wanted to win the heart of any girl in the world, it would not be a difficult matter. Not to mention, he had the reputation of being the world's best in martial arts. There were not many women in the world who could resist such an outstanding man. Even if they knew that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was the so-called demon, there would still be many women who would flock to him. June Moxie couldn't help but think of his previous life. Some ignorant young girls liked to hang out with local ruffians because they worshipped the strong. It didn't matter which era or which world they lived in, they would always worship the strong. In the eyes of most people, those who could do things that others did not dare to do were the strong. This was not surprising. It seemed that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had experienced this before. It was because the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was telling the truth, and because June Moxie knew and even understood it, that he felt so strange. Because even if it was the truth, this reason was too fucking powerful. Don't tell me you don't plan to find a wife in this life? June Moxie stretched out his hand defenselessly. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters grabbed June Dushao's outstretched hand without a trace. Similarly, she slowly channeled her netherworld true chi into June Moxie's meridians without holding back. The whole process was so harmonious and natural, as if the two of them had cooperated like this countless times. Everything was so familiar and natural. 2 unparalleled masters had put their lives in each other's hands at the same time. This was without a doubt an unprecedented matter. This was the most precious trust in this world. In response to June Moxie's question, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters smiled bitterly. The lifespan of the Netherworld clan is much longer than that of ordinary humans on this continent. If we have the heart to find a wife, then we are looking for a lifelong companion. Before our cultivation reaches the level where we can change someone's fate, if we really fall in love, it is equivalent to harming others and ourselves in the truest sense. As June Moxie listened quietly to the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, he slowly guided the Netherworld True Chi into the 3rd level of the Hongjun Pagoda to contact the flame of chaos. He slowly conveyed the meaning he wanted to express in his mind and said, "That's not right. I know that the 9 Nether First Young Master has found more than 100 wives. How do you explain this?" The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters snorted and said, "Is it difficult to understand? What kind of person is the 9 Nether First Young Master? Even if he finds 10,000 wives, he can change their fates one by one and make them immortal. Didn't I say it just now? As long as one's cultivation reaches the level where one can change one's fate, then there's no such limit. It still doesn't make sense. This is very different from what you said about lifelong companionship. Shouldn't lifelong companionship be devoted to one person?" June Moxie snorted and asked. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, "What kind of logic is this? Who told you that you can only find a single partner for lifelong companionship? As long as you have the ability, even if you marry all the women in the world, it's still the will of a monarch. If one is a companion, then wouldn't 100 be a companion? Your logic is the real fallacy that doesn't make any sense." June Moxie was dumbfounded. Marry all the women in the world? And you're acting like it's only natural? And you're saying that what I said is a fallacy that doesn't make any sense? Who's the real fallacy here? Isn't this a little too powerful? So you're the real open-minded one. This monarch is truly full of admiration. After being dumbfounded for a while, June Moxie was finally convinced and praised sincerely, "Let's not talk about anything else. Just based on the strength of your waist, it's enough for me to worship and prostrate myself before you." That's because your vision is too shallow. What does this have to do with the strength of my waist? The 9 serenities and 14 masters rolled his eyes at him and said disdainfully, "Just stay still and enjoy yourself." Jun Moxie instantly burst into tears. He was utterly defeated and retreated in a sorry state. This grandpa is too powerful. Look at the treatment he's receiving, and then think about me. I've worked so hard without complaint, and yet I'm not getting any good results. Inside the Hongjun Pagoda, the flame of primordial chaos suddenly jumped. It carefully came into contact with the misty and dark 9 nether chi that Jun Moxie had introduced. The flame curled up and seemed to carefully identify it. Then, the flame flashed and returned to its original position. It was still unhurriedly rising and falling as it burned. "Is it done?" Jun Moxie asked with his divine sense. "Isn't this too lazy? Can't you just give me a straightforward answer?" The flame of primordial chaos was still indifferent. It continued to burn slowly, completely ignoring a certain retarded person's question. This grandpa didn't burn them. Isn't that enough? Is there a need to ask? How retarded is this grandpa? This grandpa has been wise all his life. How could I be greedy for such a retarded master? Fuck. Give me some reaction. Jun Moxie said exasperatedly, "Is it so difficult to give me a straightforward answer or not?" Even the Hongjun Pagoda couldn't take it anymore. It directly ejected Jun Moxie's divine sense. I've never seen such a retarded person. Chapter 12:13. That's enough. The one who said this was 9 serenities and 14 masters. When he said this, he still calmly withdrew the netherworld true chi like before. Jun Moxie looked at him in surprise. Didn't you notice? That wonderful flame has already engraved a temporary mark in my netherworld vital energy. 9 serenities and 14 masters smiled and said, "That mark is really shallow. It probably only allows me to use it once. This is the only time." Jun Moxie breathed a sigh of relief and said casually, "You should be satisfied to be able to control it once. Do you know what kind of flame it is? I've been wondering whether such a magical flame can really be controlled by humans. Now I can finally confirm that although this flame is in your body and is controlled by you, it is separated from you. At least, it is not derived from you, right?" The 9 nether 14th young master looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. "Jun Monsieur, you brats sure have a lot of secrets on you, ah. What is this? There are stronger ones that you haven't seen yet." Jun Moxie snorted. It was not surprising that 9 serenities and 14 masters could notice this. It would be strange if he still could not notice it. "You're that 9 firmament first old master who saved me that day, right?" The 9 nether 14th young master looked up at the sky and asked casually. Jun Moxie tilted his head and smiled. "Why do you say that? What reason do you have to support your judgment?" "No reason." 9 serenities and 14 masters said silently, "It's just a feeling. In fact, this feeling has existed for a long time. It's just that you were too weak before, so I couldn't be sure. Now that you have the qualifications to threaten me, that feeling has become clearer." "That's right. I am." Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows. 9 firmament first master. Brat, you're really arrogant. Do you know that the name you casually came up with that day has already violated the greatest taboo of my 9th Hell clan? The 9 serenities and 14 masters said indifferently, "Just for the sake of the title 9 firmament first master, you and I will have to fight to the death. After this battle, as long as I'm still alive, as long as you're still alive, I'll definitely fight you." A sharp glint flashed across Jun Moxie's eyes as he said slowly, "I've long wanted to experience how powerful the so-called invincible secret skill of the 9 nether tribe is. In this battle, including me, the one with the highest chance of survival is none other than you. I believe you will have the chance to challenge me." The 9 serenities and 14 masters said calmly, "In fact, I also want to find out how many secrets you have, and how powerful your hidden secrets are." Jun Moxie was silent for a moment, then said tit for tat, "I also believe that you will have the chance, but even the 9 nether young masters may not be able to bear the secrets I have." After that, the two of them did not speak anymore. They both put their hands behind their back and looked at the area where the strange races were. No matter how the two of them would fight in the future, it was all in the future. The most important thing now was to survive in this battle. Secondly, they had to win this battle in the end. Under the accurate detection of the two's super long-range divine senses, they sensed that there was a certain commotion among those people. A blood-red flag had already been inserted into the ground in front of them. It was obvious that they were about to make a move. The next moment, the shrill sound of a horn suddenly rang out. On the side of the strange races, the horn-bearers of each troop that had not moved looked up to the sky and blew the horn in their hands at the same time. More than 10,000 horn sounds rang out at the same time, resounding through the sky. More than 700,000 to 800,000 soldiers roared at the same time, "Divine Son! Mighty!" 1,000,000 people sent off for their monarch. It was said that warriors who were sent off in such a manner, even if they were unfortunate enough to be sacrificed, their souls would not perish. They would return to the Jing-Ri shrine of the Divine Sun race and receive the prayers of the Divine Sun race for eternity. This was also the grandest expedition ceremony of the Divine Sun race since ancient times. Right now, this ceremony was once again sounded for the 10,000 Holy Emperor's suicide squad. In the instant that the horn sounded, the hundreds of thousands of strange races soldiers that were attacking in a frenzy suddenly retreated like the receding tide. The battlefield that was originally filled with battle cries suddenly fell into a deathly silence in an extremely short period of time. Amidst the deathly silence, there was a heavy pressure that caused one's heart to turn cold. This was the true meaning of the calm before the storm. Everyone understood that since the strange races had put up such a huge formation, their next attack would definitely be unprecedentedly strong. Once they charged up and attacked, the defensive line that the Xian continent's allied army had built might really collapse in an instant. But there was an exception. The number one expert of the Holy Lands, Gu Han, roared, "Holy Lands!" Mo Wudao, Shi Ruochen, and Huyen Albua all took a step forward at the same time, the blood that had accumulated under their feet splashing out because of their excessive strength. They raised their arms and shouted, "Holy Lands! 10,000 years of glory! Today is 1,000 years! Today is 1,000 years!" Gu Han's expression was extremely tragic as he roared with all the strength in his body, as though he wanted to use this roar to break through the endless skies. 10,000 years of glory! Today is 1,000 years! Today is 1,000 years! A total of 7,000 experts from the Holy Lands roared with all the strength in their bodies. At this moment, everyone's expression became solemn and respectful, awe-inspiring, and holy. These people were not in good condition. On the contrary, almost all of them were heavily injured. At this moment, they took out the heaven reversal pills that Jun Moxie had given them and swallowed them. Jun Moxie had been working day and night for the past few days. He was either refining pills or refining swords. He had finally met the basic requirements of the heaven reversing pill. This was the maximum amount of energy he could muster at the moment. But it was precisely because of this that he had won the respect of everyone from the Holy Lands. Because the effects of a single heaven reversal pill had heaven-defying effects. Everyone had a heaven reversal pill, a total of 7,000, and they were gifted to their old enemies. This kind of magnanimity, if their positions were reversed, the people from the Holy Lands felt that they would not be able to do it. There was no need for any reminders, no need for any orders. Everyone understood that right now, this was the most crucial moment. This was the moment when they needed to turn their lives into the most dazzling fireworks. Using the most dazzling and resplendent life to turn into fireworks to protect the peace of the entire continent. Without hesitation. 10,000 years of glory, 1,000 years of eternity, only for today. Under the leadership of the 3 Holy Lands sect leaders, the 7,000 people were divided into 3 groups. They were still the same as before: Hermitage, Illusory Blood Sea, and Supreme Golden City. It was orderly without the slightest bit of chaos. They walked forward step by step, without the slightest bit of hesitation. Their eyes were filled with determination. 10,000 years of glory, 10,000 years of merits, 10,000 years of everything. Everything would be fixed at this moment. Right and wrong, success and failure would turn into nothing in the blink of an eye. The three groups of people were like three torrents, silently advancing forward. Everyone's back was straight as a ramrod. In the final moments of their lives, their faces were filled with pride. The pride that belonged to the Holy Lands would exist forever. Salute! Mei Shuoyan's mournful cry shook the entire sky. Everywhere she passed, all the Tian Fa soldiers raised their hands, paying the highest respect to this old enemy of theirs. Those bastards from the three Holy Lands have always been the bunch that I hate the most. Because they have always considered themselves as the protectors of the Xian continent, not allowing any other forces to interfere. They will eliminate all existences that might be their enemies, regardless of whether they are already enemies, about to become enemies, or could become enemies. There are no exceptions. High up in the sky, the 9 Nether 14th young master let out a low sigh and said, "Before this, I'd never imagined that there would come a day when I, the 9 Nether 14th young master, would admire such a dogsh*t organization. That's right. For the sake of their so-called ideals, they have been despicable, and have done countless wrong things." June Moxie sighed and said slowly, "But at this moment, they are still great and glorious. At this moment, they are still worthy of our heartfelt respect. And with their sacrifice today, no matter how much hatred we have for each other, it will all be written off. Not only will I respect them, I will continue to respect them." 9 serenities and 14 masters sighed again. The strong wind tests the strong grass. Time reveals a man's heart. True heroes only appear in troubled times. June Moxie suddenly shouted from the sky. "People of the Holy Lands, listen up. The hatred between us will be written off. I, June Moxie, in the name of the evil Monarch Manor, promise you that I will definitely kill Zhang Kuang and take revenge for all of you." As he said the last few words, June Moxie's voice became extremely agitated. He knew that resisting the strange races was only the mission of the three Holy Lands. Although the strange races were their enemies, they had never been their enemies. The biggest enemy of the three Holy Lands was Zhang Kuang. Only Zhang Kuang. And the fact that they would never have the chance to kill Zhang Kuang to take revenge was undoubtedly the greatest regret in the hearts of the three Holy Lands. Today, right now, at the moment when they were about to die, June Moxie had given them this extremely difficult promise without caring about anything else. Zhang Kuang, a half-saint with an undying body. How could he be killed so easily? But June Moxie still promised. Because June Moxie knew that he would never allow these warriors to step on the road to the Yellow Springs with regrets. Although they were willing. "Many thanks." Mo Wudao raised his head and looked deeply at June Moxie, cupping his fists silently. Over 7,000 people cupped their fists at the same time. Then, they walked out with their heads held high. June Moxie's heart trembled. He suddenly raised his hand, and 3 huge flags fell from the sky, unfurling in the strong winds. On each of the flags, there were 4 large golden characters that shone brightly. Hermitage, Illusory Blood Sea, Supreme Golden City. Chapter 12-14. Mo Wudao and the other 2 stretched out their hands to catch the war flag that was descending from the sky, their eyes shining brightly. It was as if the radiance of their lives had suddenly blossomed. It was as if the sparks of their souls were dancing intensely. It was as if the glory of 10,000 years had finally returned to them. It was as if this banner represented the acknowledgement and gratitude of the entire continent. This life of theirs was not in vain. Heroes of the Holy Lands, have a safe journey. June Moxie said loudly. "I, June Moxie, shall send you off here." As he said that, he raised his hand and gave a solemn military salute to the troops below. Everyone from the Holy Lands fell silent for a moment before saying in unison, "Evil Monarch, regardless of whether we are friends or foes in our next lives, we will remember this kindness in our hearts." When June Moxie gave them the heaven-defying pills, they had only accepted it calmly. When June Moxie treated their injuries, they had treated it as normal. Even when Jun Moxie gave them divine weapons during the battle, they did not say anything. But at this moment, they were filled with gratitude for Jun Moxie's understanding, because right now, Jun Moxie represented the entire continent. After saying that, the 7,000 people from the 3 Holy Lands walked out without turning back. Finally, the remaining 5 guards who had followed Xiachong Tian also joined the Sacred Land's death-defying army without any hesitation. No one was surprised by their return. The troops did not move at all, and they accepted them. No matter what happened in the past, right now, they were only comrades who were going to die together. That was all. In the mortal world, they would fight side by side. On the road to the Yellow Springs, they would still fight together. Mo Wudao, Shi Ruochen, Huyen Ao Bo, Leng Tong, Chu Wu Hui, Cheng Yin Shao, their faces were filled with determination and calmness as they walked over up in the sky. Gu Han closed his eyes as 2 streams of tears flowed uncontrollably, the 7,000 disciples, the final elite strength of the Holy Lands. From today onwards, the 3 Holy Lands that had dominated the continent for 10,000 years would finally become history. It would become a monument. On the other side, Sasho Kitajima's strange voice rang out, "Warriors of the Divine Sun Race. Your most glorious moment has come. The Yasukuni Shrine has opened its arms wide for your dedication today. Your names and deeds will be passed down for generations to come. Your souls will return to the warm embrace of the Divine Sun God. Mortal, brave warriors, for the future of the Divine Sun, for your eternity." Sasho Kitima suddenly channeled chi into his danton and roared with all his might, "Kill the chicken for me. Kill them all." Almost 20,000 Saint Emperors roared at the same time. Their veins popped out, and they roared at the top of their lungs. Then, like a sudden tide, they all charged forward. Behind them, there were still nearly 10,000 peak experts holding the line. Jun Moxie and 9 Serenities and 14 Masters frowned at the same time. They could naturally tell that the remaining 10,000 people were the true strength of the foreign races. He was also a true expert who had climbed to his current level with his own strength and possessed a truly profound cultivation base. "Get ready. It's really about to start," Jun Moxie said in a low voice. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters held the divine song in her hands and said lightly, "Try to spread out the attack range as much as possible. Even if your flames are spread out to the smallest extent, its power will not weaken." "I understand." Jun Moxie gritted his teeth. "With my current strength, I can only release 1 wave at most in a short period of time. If I want to release another wave, I will have to wait for at least 2 hours. How much of the enemy's strength do you think this wave can destroy?" "That's really hard to say. We can only do our best." 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' face was unusually heavy. He knew the weight of Jun Moxie's words. Although the 3 Holy Lands were prepared to sacrifice their lives, they should be sacrificing the last 10,000 strong experts of the foreign races, and not these 20,000 people who were used as cannon fodder. Whether these 20,000 people could cause damage, and how much damage they could cause, all depended on the performance of 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' song. 1,000 miles soul-chasing sword. Could it really chase a soul for 1,000 miles? On the battlefield, the 2 troops were rapidly approaching each other. The people from the Holy Lands advanced step by step, not saying a word. On the other side, the foreign race's army howled crazily as they charged forward. One side was silent, but the other side was deafening. Without a doubt, this was the clearest contrast. This time, the foreign races were all experts of the Holy Emperor level. Even if they might have used some special secret technique to accelerate their growth, they were still true experts of the Holy Emperor level. Their speed was abnormally fast, and in a flash the entire army had already crossed the middle of the battlefield. They were like crows flying in the sky, descending without any fear. Right at this moment, following a light shout in the sky, the entire sky suddenly darkened. And the key to the darkening of the sky was because countless black flames floated in the sky, covering the sky and covering the earth. At the same time, an endless murderous aura instantly enveloped the land and the sky. Another extremely intense tune abruptly resounded in the sky. 9 Serenity's song, 1,000 Miles Soul-Chasing Sword. When this sound rang out, even a Saint Monarch-level expert could feel it. The entire sky seemed to be filled with cold and sharp swords after this tune rose up. It was as if there were hundreds of millions of deadly swords gathered in the sky, ready to go. At this moment, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters seemed to have released all of their netherworld true chi, burning and quickly forming a huge black cloud in the sky. When the divine song started playing, the sound instantly became extremely sharp and fierce. When the volume was raised to the highest, there was a sudden boom, as if something had suddenly exploded in the sky. Then, countless black light swords suddenly appeared in the sky. With a rough look, there were at least tens of thousands of them. With a sharp whistling sound, the black light swords suddenly swooped down. The flame of primordial chaos that was quietly floating in the sky suddenly seemed to be attached to something. Every spark was attached to a black light sword, and they rushed down at high speed. It was as if a slow-moving snail had suddenly turned into a raptor in a high-speed predatory state at this moment. This may sound very long-winded, but in fact, from the appearance of the black flames to the flame of primordial chaos suddenly rushing down with the black light swords, the time taken was not even a tenth of the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye. However, all the experts of the foreign races that were rushing over had a look of indifference on their faces. They puffed out their chests and rushed forward. This sudden wave of attack in the sky undoubtedly covered a large area, and its power was also shocking to the extreme. If this wave of attack was only targeted at 10 people, or even 100 or a few hundred people, it might have achieved a very good result. However, now, the target range was about 10,000 people. No matter who was the one who launched this attack in the sky, it was still just one person. No matter how strong a person was, how strong could he be? Even if the one who launched this wave of attack was a saint, if he wanted to attack 20,000 Holy Emperor troops at the same time, it might not have any real effect. The strength of a single person would never reach such a level. If one person could really heavily injure an army of 10,000 with one attack, that would be a legend, a myth. Human strength was limited, and it was impossible for human strength to create such a miracle. Therefore, the army of the foreign races of the Holy Emperor was completely disdainful. This wave of attack could at most have the effect of scaring people. In any case, we had already given up on the idea of going back alive. What was the use of this kind of intimidating attack? Even if they were hit in the chest by that black light sword, it would definitely not be able to break through their body protection. What a joke, to be able to launch such a powerful attack. There was no doubt that it was a peak expert, but this expert's actions were as if he did not have a brain. Could it be the legendary retard? With this kind of mentality, all the foreign races experts who were charging forward did not even bother to block this wave of attack, and directly used their own bodies as weapons, charging forward. As long as they came into contact with the enemy's warriors, they would immediately self-destruct. Everyone had made up their minds. But in the next moment, the cruel reality mercilessly overturned their wishful thinking. The black light sword disappeared in a flash. This kind of speed was already close to the speed of light. It had already surpassed the limit of all speed in the world. The formation of the foreign races of the Holy Emperor troops was already extremely dense, and this attack covered at least 4/5 of the area. At this point, the light sword that had used up all its power had already disappeared, but their mission had already been perfectly completed. Black flames that were like black snowflakes quietly attached themselves to the bodies of the foreign races. Some of them seemed to have a few of them on their bodies. The final show was about to begin. Stop! Mo Wudao's expression turned cold, and with a wave of his hand, the Holy Land's troops stopped in their tracks. Quietly looking at those silent black flames, everyone's eyes were filled with a thick sense of fear. Just a few days ago, the scene of dozens of Holy Land's experts being burned to death seemed to flash in front of everyone's eyes. That kind of elegant cruelty made everyone's scalp go numb. This scene made everyone realize one thing: Jun Moxie had made his move. Indeed, because the light sword pursued speed, it did not cause much damage. This wave of foreign races Holy Emperor experts, who were planning to activate their extreme self-destruct method, was just charging forward, when suddenly a shrill scream rang out from among them. This was undoubtedly an unlucky fellow. The flame of primal chaos coincidentally landed on his exposed face. Chapter 12:15. However, every time they rolled, every time they struck, the only result was that the black flames grew stronger. Because this was the flame of chaos, the most original source of fire in the universe, burning their vital energy, burning their bodies, burning their souls, burning the earth, and even the air. It could burn without any medium, and there was no medium that could interfere with the burning of the flame of chaos. Even the world itself was something that could be burned by the flame of chaos. Not to mention the relatively fragile human body. All their struggles were futile. Even the strong bodies of the Holy Emperor experts, under the burning of the flame of chaos, would not be any tougher than a piece of tofu. More than 15,000 strange races warriors rolled on the ground in pain, howling loudly, their bodies contorting and convulsing. Some of them decisively pulled out their swords and cut down the already burning area. However, they found that these brave warriors cutting off their own wrists' actions were all in vain. The limbs that were chopped off were still burning, and the places where they were cut off were still burning with the black flames. Even the swords that came into contact with the flames started to burn, instantly becoming one. Some of them could not bear the pain and wanted to self-destruct. But they found that ever since they were stuck to their bodies by the strange flames, they could no longer freely control their strength. They could not even self-destruct. Even his soul couldn't move. The only thing they could do now was to watch helplessly as they were burned into nothingness. As for the less than 4,000 strange races Holy Emperor experts who were lucky enough to escape, in the face of such an unimaginable change, their ferocious charge suddenly became motionless. Each of them widened their eyes as they stared at the black flames in front of them. Their eyes were filled with genuine astonishment. At this moment, all that was left in their hearts was endless fear. They were indeed not afraid of death. When they accepted the mission, they already knew that this was a death mission, and that they would definitely die. But they were afraid of such a strange death. Such a thing had obviously exceeded the limits of their imagination. Even in their dreams, they would never have thought that in this world, there would be such a strange thing that could actually silently swallow more than 16,000 Holy Emperor experts in one fell swoop. This is the Holy Emperor. More than 16,000 true Holy Emperor experts. Even if they had only temporarily used the forbidden secret medicine to forcibly raise their strength to the Holy Emperor level before the medicine's effect wore off, they would still be true Holy Emperor level experts. However, he actually fell here screaming in pain. Not to mention 16,000 Holy Emperor, even 16,000 pigs would take a considerable amount of time to wipe them out, right? Even if he were to behead them one by one, wouldn't it be enough to tire a Holy Emperor to the point of vomiting blood? But now, such an inconceivable thing had happened in front of his eyes. These people were the most loyal warriors of the Divine Sun. It was the basic quality of a desperado to face death with equanimity. Even if their bones were to be broken bit by bit, they would not make a sound. Not to mention such a hoarse voice, screaming and howling miserably without any image. But the dark and elegant mysterious flame in front of them made them give up their pride, lose their courage, and lose their dignity. They were like pitiful worms on the verge of death, moaning and whimpering. Their cries were so tragic that it was enough to scare off the millions of wolves on the plains. Why did it turn out like this? The remaining 4,000 people stood there in a daze, as if they had suddenly turned into countless statues at this moment. Close to 4,000 true Holy Emperor experts, at this moment, did not even dare to move. That mysterious black flame continued to burn gracefully, gradually connecting together, finally forming a huge fan. It was tens of miles long and several miles wide. It completely separated the people on both sides. The warriors on both sides had the heart to fight with their lives, and did not care about their own lives. But now, even if they gritted their teeth and hated their hearts, they could only look at each other. They could not cross it. They did not dare to cross it. It was as if this black flame was the netherworld that separated the two worlds. The Holy Lands were not too concerned, because no matter what, this was a huge victory for them. Most importantly, they had personally witnessed the terrifying power of these flames. But it was completely different for the divine son. Chuangshang Beidao's spittle was flying all over the place earlier. He had been so passionate, so imposing, so resolute, but everything had turned into a complete joke in front of this black flame. More than 16,000 Holy Emperor experts were still screaming in pain in the black flame, rolling on the ground as their bodies slowly turned into nothingness. Their bodies and souls were destroyed, and they were beyond redemption. As for the remaining 4,000 people, they could only stare blankly at the original enemy, all of them trembling in fear. Compared to the mobilization and desperate charge just a moment ago, this was a perfect irony. Chuangshang Beidao only felt a burning sensation on his face when he saw this turn of events. His heart was so angry that it felt like it was about to explode. An intense feeling of shame reverberated in the lake of his heart. So shameful, so shameful. The faces of the divine son were directly shoved into their crotches, and it was the kind of crotches that were left unwiped after taking a big bath. How could they endure this? Who are you? Come out. Come out if you have the guts. Sasho Kitajima had completely lost his mind, waving his fists in the air as he cursed with a red face. Because of this person, all the warriors of the divine son had become a joke, a complete joke. Even if they successfully conquered the Xian continent, this scene before them would become a stain that the divine son would never be able to wash off for millions of years. This was a great humiliation. And this person was someone who could kill more than 16,000 Holy Emperor experts with just a single strike. This horrifying fact caused Sasho Kitajima's legs to cramp, and the killing intent in his heart blazed. If this person was not eliminated, there would never be a day of peace. These fake saint emperors who were cannon fodder had all used the divine son's unique secret technique to forcefully increase their strength by drawing out their life force. That was how they obtained their current astonishing strength. And after these people successfully increased their strength, although they truly possessed the cultivation, speed, and energy of a holy emperor, the time limit was only a short 2 days. 2 days of holy emperor. Moreover, during those 2 days, because all the potential of his life would be continuously stimulated and squeezed out bit by bit, his strength would continue to grow until he reached the peak level. Moreover, this peak state could be maintained for as long as 4 hours. With 2 hours of peak strength, it was enough for him to do far, far too many things. The users of this secret technique, even if they did not self-destruct after the 2 days, they would still die from the exhaustion of their own life force. But in these 2 days, they were truly Holy Emperor experts, or even peak Holy Emperor experts. There was no doubt about this. Even if these fake Holy Emperor experts fought with real Holy Emperor experts, they only lacked experience and cultivation. In terms of cultivation, they were not inferior. In fact, they might even be more ferocious. After all, their strength would continue to increase due to the extreme pressure of their life force. They could be said to be the most terrifying humanoid superweapon. And that strike just now, with just a single strike, it had killed more than 80% of those humanoid superweapons. Those that had survived had completely lost their will to fight. This result was completely unimaginable in Chuangshang Beidao's eyes. Because of their vision and distance, Jun Moxie and the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had used their own techniques and were invisible in the clouds. Sasho Kitajima did not know that it was actually the two of them who had worked together to achieve such a glorious result. Moreover, Sasho Kitajima had never encountered the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters before. So, he naturally attributed all the credit to the unparalleled expert who could injure him with just a glance. He really thought too highly of Jun Dashao. Sasho Kitajima stared helplessly at the black flames that had completely separated the two parties. He was at his wits' end and could do nothing about it. The two people above him treated his curses as the fart of a mad dog. Neither of them paid any attention to him. Not only did they not care about him, but they also did not have the energy to do so. Jun Moxie had to unleash so much chaotic flame in an instant to cover such a wide area. It could be said that he had unleashed his abilities to the limit. If he had not borrowed the power of the Hongjun Pagoda, he would not have been able to do it. Even with the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, the price he had to pay was still quite heavy. The attack just now had almost drained all the spiritual power in his body in an instant. Although it was not a strong backlash, Jun Dashao really did not have much energy left. It was already quite good that he could still stand in the void. This time, he was hurriedly adjusting his breathing in order to recover as soon as possible. He did not have the energy to care about that abnormal foreign race's hooting. As for the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, the 1,000 Miles soul-chasing song had also turned him into an empty shell. He was in a worse state than Jun Dashao. He was also in the process of recovering. The two of them were recovering at the same time, which caused quite a commotion. The spiritual energy in the sky could be seen with the naked eye gradually forming a vortex storm. It was as if countless wild pythons were wreaking havoc in the sky. Dark clouds rolled and surged in from all directions. In the sky above the battlefield, there was not the slightest bit of spiritual energy within a radius of thousands of miles. Even though there was a very small amount of it that had drifted away, it could no longer be used. At this moment, everyone present, all the experts, felt an indescribable feeling of suffocation. The spiritual energy in the sky formed countless huge tornadoes and poured into the two people's bodies. On Jun Moxie's side, there was a dazzling purple light, while on the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' side, there was an overwhelming darkness. It was eerie and terrifying. However, the two people were very close to each other. It was like one person was an angel on one side and the other was a demon on the other. Chapter 1216. As the spiritual chi surged rapidly, it actually enveloped the two of them in thousands of layers. Outsiders were unable to clearly see what was happening within the two mystical balls of light. Until now, the flame of primordial chaos was still burning on the ground, as if it would last forever. As for the surviving experts of the Holy Emperor's suicide squad, they were completely scared out of their wits. No one dared to step into the area enveloped by the black flames. The 7,000 elites from the Holy Lands looked at the outsiders through the black flames. The look in their eyes was even fiercer than the black flames. They stood quietly, motionless. Only their blood-stained white robes fluttered in the wind. The entire battlefield was silent for more than 2 hours. The flame of primordial chaos burned for more than 2 hours. Everything on the original battlefield had been burned into nothingness by the existence of the flame of primordial chaos. There was no air, no corpses, no blood, and even no land. Where the flame of primordial chaos originally was, there was now a black hole of unknown depth. A huge black hole. It was like a complete cliff, or even a black hole. Jun Moxie was high up in the sky. The spiritual chi storm around him continued to move, becoming stronger and stronger. Finally, when it gradually subsided, Jun Moxie slowly opened his eyes. His eyes flashed. Not far away, 9 Serenities and 14 Masters seemed to have a very high level of tacit understanding with Jun Dashao. They opened their eyes almost at the same time. Jun Moxie's art of unlocking heaven's fortune was unparalleled. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters' cultivation was unparalleled. Both of them had actually woken up at the same time. Their eyes met again, and they smiled at each other. Everyone's smile contained a deep meaning. After this extreme consumption, Jun Moxie was only a step away from breaking through the 7th level of the Hongjun Pagoda. And 9 Serenities and 14 Masters felt that they were close to breaking through the seal. Both of them had a vague premonition. Perhaps they just needed to put in a little more effort, and they would be able to complete the breakthrough now. However, both of them stopped their breakthrough at the same time. This was a battlefield. Once they broke through, they would need a considerable amount of time to stabilize their realm. Even with the help of the Hongjun Pagoda, Jun Moxie still needed more than half a night to stabilize his cultivation. As for the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, it might take even longer. He might not even be able to digest everything in 1 or 2 days. However, with the severity of the battle, the two of them definitely wouldn't have enough time to break through their limits. That black flame of yours is truly an extraordinary heavenly spirit object. The 9 serenities and 14 masters sighed softly. Although it's just a trace of the mark, it contains an unusually strong trace of the Great Tao. Even with such a short contact, I have benefited a lot. The 9 serenities and 14 masters' gaze was a little complicated. Finally, he cupped his fists and bowed sincerely. June Moxie, this time, I really have to thank you. I don't dare to say thank you. If it wasn't for your help, how could I have completed this divine strike? It was also because of this strike that I would not have been able to improve so much today. I can break through at any time. June Moxie smiled faintly and said, everything is said without words. Everything is said without words. The 9 serenities and 14 masters laughed heartily. June Emosia looked at the ground. The flame of primal chaos had left a wide mark on the ground. He frowned and raised his right hand. The next moment, the black flame slowly rose from the huge black hole. For some reason, the originally deep abyss was instantly filled with thick soil. The black hole that was hundreds of miles wide and hundreds of miles long disappeared in an instant. June Emosia waved his hand, and the flame of primal chaos that was floating in the air disappeared from the ground with a whoosh. All that was left in its original position was a flat and dry ground that was as flat as a cement field. On both sides of the ground, the two sides were still facing each other. It was as if the flame of chaos that had engulfed 16,000 people was just an illusion that did not cause any damage. Sasho Kitajima knew that he couldn't deal with the strange black flame. He was considering if he should split up his forces and go around the area of the black flame. After all, it could be said that a new divine retribution had formed here. It was not a wise move to attack from here. However, he did not expect the ground that had disappeared to reappear in the blink of an eye. Sasho Kitajima was bewildered for a moment. However, he clearly did not have enough time to think, because the time left for this group of people was running out. Sasho Kitajima's plan for this battle was meticulous. Previously, he had used a secret spell to raise the strength of the 20,000 daredevil soldiers to the Holy Emperor level. However, he still did not let them join the battle immediately. Instead, he let them circulate their cultivation to the limit and increase the effect of the secret spell to the maximum, reaching the peak of the Holy Emperor level. Although the daredevil soldiers could only fight for 4 hours, these 4 hours were the maximum amount of time they had to deal with the 20,000 peak Holy Emperor level. In these 4 hours, there was no force in the world that could fight against the peak Holy Emperor daredevil army, not even the sages. A full 4 hours could definitely do too many things. However, the world was just so mysterious. The joint attack of June Moxie and the 9 serenities and 14 masters not only destroyed more than 80% of the peak Holy Emperor army in an instant, but the continuous burning of the flame of chaos also delayed the battle for more than 2 hours, in addition to the time they had to prepare. There was only less than a quarter of an hour left for the Dare to Die Legion to maintain their peak combat power. If they could not self-destruct within 15 minutes and perish together with the enemy, they would die because of exhaustion of life force. This was really a joke of the heavens. And now, the 4,000 people whose morale had fallen to rock bottom were about 100 miles away from the enemy. Normally, this would be an extremely short distance, but at this moment, it was the difference between victory and defeat. Time was money. Time was life. At this moment, Chuangshang Beidao had truly comprehended the true meaning of these words with his own body. So, the moment Sasho Kitajima saw the ground reappear, he did not even hesitate as he waved his hand and roared at the remaining 4,000 people, "For the glory of the divine sun, charge! Kill the chickens!" Sasho Kitajima was still the #1 person of the strange races. His reputation was extraordinary. With this roar, the previously dispirited daredevil army suddenly regained their fighting spirit. A wave of mournful howls rang out, and the 4,000 people charged forward without a care for their own safety. At this moment, Sasho Kitajima was almost in a state of panic. He looked at the ground, only to see that after the first strange race charged past, the ground did not move at all. It was unusually thick. He could not help but feel relieved. It seemed like the ground could not be burned after all. Although the black flames were strange, they could not burn everything. Chuangshang Beidao saw that those 4,000+ people had already charged in, and they would definitely be able to use their most extreme methods to destroy the defensive line of the Allied forces before the time limit. Chuangshang Beidao felt that his heart was at ease, and with another wave of his hand, the outsiders' army instantly sounded their bugle horns. All the troops charged forward at the same time, like wolves and tigers. Although there were only 4,000 people left, it was enough to blast open a path. Sasho Kidinma comforted himself in his heart, his eagle-like eyes still staring unblinkingly at the Holy Land's troops. In his eyes, these 7,000 people would be turned into minced meat in a moment's time. But why would Jun Moxie be so kind as to fill up this piece of land so that the enemy could attack them? There must be a demon behind this abnormal situation. And now, the demon was here. All of this was just a smokescreen that Jun Moxie had set up. The land had indeed been filled up again, but under the control of Jun Dashao's power of earth, it was only a few feet thick at the top. It was only because of the power of earth that it could not fall down. In essence, it was just a huge floating bridge. When the last person of the 4,000 death squad stepped on this piece of land, Jun Moxie's handsome face revealed a sinister smile. Under the dumbfounded eyes of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, he shouted, "Power of water! Activate!" With a splash, the heavenly river flowed down again. But this time, it was even more ferocious than the previous time. Apart from using the power of water to condense all the water in a 1,000 li radius, Jun Moxie had also released all the water that he'd sucked into the Hongjun Pagoda earlier. The area in front of the Holy Lands group had turned into a vast ocean, with huge waves towering into the sky. Countless experts of the strange races who were flying in the air were smashed down by this sudden flood. They fell into the water and flopped around like drowned rats. Then, Jun Moxie confirmed that all the strange races had landed on the ground, and that the monstrous waves had filled everyone's vision. He laughed sinisterly and shouted, "Sink! Sink your mother's Jingri shrine. Shrine your mother's head. More like a divine toilet." With a loud rumble, the ground collapsed again. All the experts of the strange race's death squad. Not a single one of them was spared, and all 4,000 of them fell into the huge pit that was hundreds of miles wide. Boom, 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 boom. It was as if there were no firecrackers on New Year's Eve, and they reluctantly used rocket launchers to replace them. The sound was deafening. Countless waves actually splashed up from the ground. It was really a waterfall that shot up 3,000 feet. It was already the last moment. If they did not self-destruct, they would not be able to survive. These peak Holy Emperor experts did not care whether there were enemies around them or not, and all of them started a brilliant fireworks display. Anyway, they could not see anything with the water blocking their view. Who cared if it was useful or not? If they self-destructed like this, their families would be able to live happily, and their souls could still enter the Jingri shrine. If they insisted on not self-destructing, they would end up as cowards, and that would be the end of them. Driven by this thought, over 4,000 Holy Emperor experts gritted their teeth and exploded in unison. Mo Wudao and the rest were stunned. Chapter 12:17. The violent tremors caused the ground beneath his feet to shake and even show signs of collapsing. Finally, everyone from the Holy Land was prepared for this. They flew up and with a swoosh, flew back a few dozen feet, and finally stabilized themselves. When they looked again, the ground where they were originally standing had collapsed and cracked, and a large part of it had disappeared. On the side of the Allied forces, apart from a slight impact, they instantly stabilized themselves. But on the other side, there was no sign of it stopping at all. With Jun Dashao's temper, how could he stop the collapse on that side? What's more, there were still the 4,000 Holy Emperors' self-destruction to open up a path. If they really stopped it by force, the one who would bear the impact of this self-destruction would be Jun Dashao himself. Borrowing this unprecedented support, The power of Earth was fully activated, and the whole area collapsed with an earth-shattering force. A classic example of pushing the boat with the current. Jun Dushao had always dreamed of creating such a thing. Now that it had appeared in front of him, if he still didn't seize the opportunity, then he wouldn't be Jun Moxie. Under the command of Sasho Kitajima, the troops of the mutated races had already begun a strong charge. They were prepared to open up the passage after the 4,000 martyrs sacrificed themselves, and the army would use this as an entry point to advance. The eyes of all the mutated races were filled with excitement. Finally, the mysterious passage was going to be opened. Driven by such a mentality, everyone was charging with all their might. So much so that when they discovered the change in front of them, the vanguard troops had already quickly rushed to the edge of the black hole. There was no time to stop their advance. Many people shouted excitedly and rushed over, but in mid-air, they were surprised to find that there was nothing under their feet. Because of their forward momentum, they actually took a few big steps forward, as if they were walking on air. Only then did they come to their senses, waving their hands and feet as they screamed and fell down. From extreme excitement to extreme fear, they experienced an extreme change. Of course, those at the back noticed the abnormal change in front of them and immediately stopped. How could they watch as the people at the front made the same mistakes? They shouted even louder, informing the troops at the back. But amidst the earth-shattering noise, who could hear what the people at the front were saying? The army at the back had already started moving. It charged forward with a momentum that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Its imposing manner was majestic and unstoppable. It wasn't something that could be stopped just like that. As a result, the people at the front of the queue were destroyed. They didn't want to repeat the same mistake. As he shouted loudly, his body involuntarily rushed forward, until he rushed into the black hole and turned into a flying person, falling down like dumplings. The scene was spectacular and tragic. It was truly a sight rarely seen in history. Many people also wanted to brace themselves and not rush forward no matter what, but the situation in front of them was already like riding a tiger. Almost instantly, they were pushed to the ground by the huge force behind them. Then, a group of colleagues stepped on their corpses, trampling them into a pile of rotten flesh as they rushed into the black hole one after another and fell down. Jun Moxie saw that the situation was turning for the better, and there was still some residual shockwaves from the self-detonation of the 4,000 people. In for a penny, in for a pound, in for a pound. The power of Earth moved again, and another patch of land instantly turned into a deep black hole. As a result, there were too many muddle-headed warriors who didn't know what was going on. They shouted fervently and passionately, kill the chicken," as they fell down. First, their faces were filled with bravery, then endless confusion, and finally, their faces were twisted with fear. It had to be said that the combination of the flame of chaos and the power of Earth was an excellent combination. The terrifying destructive power of this combination was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. After burning for more than 2 hours, the flame of chaos, which had been accelerated by the 9 serenities and 14 masters, had actually burned down the black hole for thousands of feet. Suddenly activating the power of Earth under such a slope would result in 10 times the result with half the effort. Not to mention the fact that there was a total of 4,000 peak Saint Emperors exploding at the same time. If it wasn't for the flame of chaos burning for a long time, with Jun Moxie's current ability, creating a hole that was hundreds of feet high was already his limit. Moreover, the area of the hole could not have been so vast. If that had been the case, many experts would not have died. At most, they would have been able to climb up. But now, the hole was thousands of feet high, and there were still his comrades behind him, falling like rocks on his head. Moreover, there were countless rocks and mud falling from above. Survival rate. Only by burning incense and praying devoutly for a dozen lifetimes might there be a glimmer of hope. The others were definitely widows, and their only son had died. There was no hope. Sasho Kitajima's eyes widened in shock. He stared blankly, feeling that everything in front of him was a dream. Even if it was a nightmare, it wouldn't be this cruel. It wasn't just the strange races. Everyone on the battlefield seemed to have turned into clay statues at this moment. Jun Moxie was still doing his best to spread the power of Earth. With the 4,000 Holy Emperor's self-detonation as a shield, he was really satisfied. Every wave of his hand created a hole that was only a few dozen feet wide. Such a hole was naturally not very effective against the Holy Emperor Saints who were some distance away from the hole. However, the foreign race's soldiers under Shenxian were all falling down like dumplings. Piece after piece. For a moment, Jun Dushao was so relaxed and happy that he couldn't help but compose a poem. He shook his head and said, 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, 5 pieces, 6 pieces, 7 pieces, 8 pieces, 9 pieces, 10 pieces, 11 pieces. Then, as 9 serenities and 14 masters looked at him like he was looking at a monster, he added the last line. Disappear even after falling into the hole. When he was done, Jun Moxie's power of Earth was almost used up. The 4,000 Holy Emperor's self-detonation had also been used up. Then, he turned to 9 serenities and 14 masters and said proudly, Brother 14, what do you think of my poem? 9 serenities and 14 masters widened his eyes and looked at Jun Moxie like he was a monster. Then he looked at the hellish scene on the ground and opened his mouth, but he couldn't say anything. After a long time, he shook his head and sighed. People say I'm a demon who brings disaster to the world, and a crazy murderer. But after seeing you today, I feel like I'm a frog at the bottom of a well. I've finally seen the vastness of the Milky Way, and I'm truly ashamed of my inferiority. He added with some disappointment, compared to you, how am I qualified to be called a demon who brings disaster to the world? You're flattering me. Brother 14, you're flattering me. Jun Moxie cupped his hands and said humbly, actually, I feel like I'm not good enough. 9 serenities and 14 masters twisted his neck and turned his head to the side. He gritted his teeth and thought, compared to this guy in front of me, I'm a fucking good person. I'm at least a good person who has cultivated for hundreds of lives. On the ground, the number 1 expert of the outsiders, Chuangshang Beidao, raised his head and roared. He spat out a mouthful of blood, which flew over a dozen zhang away. Bastard! Bastard! But in a fit of rage, this number 1 expert of the foreign races couldn't even form a complete sentence. His hands and feet were trembling as if he was having a spasm, or as if he was suffering from a stroke. Sasho Kitajima couldn't be blamed for losing his composure. The losses in this battle were too heavy. In just a short while, hundreds of thousands of people had fallen, and they wouldn't be able to come back up after falling. The number of people on the side of the strange races was high, but they couldn't just lose hundreds of thousands of people like this. Especially when not a single person from the other side died. This was too unfair. At this moment, Sasho Kitajima was trembling like a leaf in the wind. He looked like a poor little girl who had been gang-raped by 100 strong men. Sigh, this guy can't have a cerebral thrombosis, right? Jun Moxie looked at Sasho Kitajima from afar and said with pity, how pitiful! The 9 nether 14th young master suddenly had the urge to vomit blood. He had seen cats crying for mice, and he had seen people gloating over other people's misfortune. But this guy in front of him, this guy had tricked 20,000 Holy Emperor and killed at least 100,000 warriors of the strange races. He didn't even lose a single hair on his side, and this guy could still do this? 9 serenities and 14 masters truly felt that there was a saying that made sense. Only when you need to learn something will you regret not having enough books. Right now, he couldn't find a suitable word to describe this guy who was grinning like a hippopotamus. Everyone says that this young master is a demon, but the number of people this young master has killed in thousands of years isn't even as many as this guy killed in an hour. I'm too pure compared to him. What was despicable, what was shameless, what was despicable, what was despicable. Today, I finally saw the standard. The entire battlefield was so silent that even a pin drop could be heard. Whether it was the allied forces of the continent, or the side of the strange races, everyone held their breath. Their eyes twitched as if they had cramps, blankly staring at the huge pit in the center, which had expanded by at least 2 times. It was pitch black and it seemed to be emitting black gas. It was like a huge demon's mouth, greedily breathing in. Change direction. Kill the chickens, kill the chickens, kill the chickens, kill the chickens. Sasho Kitajima's voice sounded like he was howling. It made people feel like he was going to vomit blood with every word he said. The remaining 10,000 people, charge. Kill them all, kill them all, kill, kill, kill. The remaining 10,000 people naturally referred to the final trump card, the 10,000 Saint Kings and Saints in the truest sense of the word. They all turned their gazes at the same time, and once again began to advance from another direction. Although they had to take a detour of at least a few hundred miles, it was still better than standing here. Even if these experts all died in battle on the other side, it was still more valuable and meaningful than being scared to death here. After losing a few 100,000 vanguards, the army of the strange races regained their fighting spirit and followed the 10,000 people in an orderly fashion as they took a detour from another direction. However, their attack this time was much quieter. Their previous vigor and excitement had disappeared without a trace. Chapter 12:18. The speed of a great lord was astonishing. In just a moment, the 7 of them were already in front of the second young master. Bastard! Who was the one who attacked just now? Sasho Kitajima's eyes were burning with anger as he glared at Jun Moxie and 9 Serenities and 14 masters. There was a trace of astonishment in his eyes. Why were there 2 people? Was it not just one? That's not right. 9 Serenities and 14 masters' face instantly turned cold. What kind of person was he? Even if Sasho Kitajima was a level 4 great lord, he did not have the right to make such a fuss in front of him. How could the dignity of the world's #1 expert be offended by such a disgusting alien race? Jun Moxie's eyes also sharpened. However, he seemed to have thought of something and subconsciously took a step back. Chuangshang Beidao had never seen Jun Moxie's true appearance before. Although he could feel that Jun Moxie's cultivation was not inferior to his, but in his heart, that kind of shocking aura that could turn lightning with a single glance was not something that this young man should be able to display. Furthermore, this great ability that could destroy the heavens and the earth was not something that a 4th-grade Saint Monarch could come up with. With one look, he could tell that this young man's cultivation was similar to his own. Naturally, he could not be that mysterious peerless expert. This black-robed man, on the other hand, had a sinister aura. He couldn't see through him at all. Even with his cultivation, he still couldn't see his true appearance. Without a doubt, this person was definitely an unfathomable and dangerous person. He was definitely an expert at the pinnacle. Then the answer was obvious. If this series of changes did not originate from him, who else could it be? So although he was asking, his pair of venomous snake-like eyes were already locked onto the 9 Nether 14th young master. This person was definitely a great enemy. The lives of hundreds of thousands of my people were buried because of this sinister black-robed man. Just by looking at his eccentric aura, one could tell that he wasn't a good person. Only he would be able to use such a demonic method. That pretty young fellow with delicate features obviously wouldn't have such insidious methods and a vicious heart. It is this person who carries the blood debt of our divine sun race today. The eyes of Sasho Kitajima and the 6 great monarchs instantly turned red. He stared fixedly at the 9 Nether 14th young master, wishing that he could pounce on him and bite off all his flesh, swallowing him alive. Bastard! The 9 Nether 14th young master roared angrily, feeling a little wronged in his heart. How could he not know that he'd taken the blame for that black-hearted pretty boy again? But in the face of a great enemy, there was no point in trying to explain. In his anger, he naturally did not have any good expressions as he glared fiercely at Chuangshang Beidao. Seeing this young master, all of you are still not kneeling down and begging for death? Are you still dreaming of resisting this young master's might? Such a sinister voice was like a biting cold wind blowing out of a freezer, freezing one's soul. You bastard, you should be hacked into pieces. Cruel and merciless executioner. Sasho Kitajima was almost driven mad by the words of the 9 Serenities and 14 masters. With bloodshot eyes, he spat out each word. Fuck your grandpa and fuck your ancestors The face of the 9 serenities and 14 masters, who was hidden in the black fog, immediately turned extremely ugly. The atmosphere was originally not good, and Sasho Kitajima's words were like adding oil to the fire, directly turning the hot summer weather into a cold winter. The cold atmosphere naturally came from the 9 serenities and 14 masters. His entire body was shrouded in black fog, and the temperature of the entire space dropped rapidly. The 9 serenities and 14 masters was about to explode from anger. This strange race is really a fucking idiot. He did not even know who did it just now, and he hastily started to denounce me. By right, both sides were originally enemies, so it did not matter. I clearly did not do it, and you actually pointed at my nose and scolded my ancestors? Did my ancestors offend you? Who the hell are you? Jun Moxie was currently standing behind the 9 serenities and 14 masters. He sighed slightly and said in a solemn voice, although both sides are enemies, and it is the nature of men to die on the battlefield, but this kind of wanton killing is indeed a little against the harmony of the world. Young Master Jun's handsome face was filled with a pure and holy look, as if he was bemoaning the state of the universe and pitying the fate of mankind. In a gentle voice, he said, even if they are ants, they are still living beings. These strange races, although they are a little disgusting, but cows are born from cows' mothers, and humans are born from humans' mothers. Although they are neither cows nor humans, they are still born from their mothers. This is a fact that cannot be denied. Long live understanding. When Sasho Kitajima heard this short paragraph from Jun Dashao, he suddenly felt extremely comfortable and happy. He was so moved that he almost shed tears. This is more like what a human should say. Look at that pretty lad's words, he's so magnanimous. How is he like this murderous bastard dressed in black? What does he mean by neither cows nor humans? What does he mean by true? 9 serenities and 14 masters turned his head to look at Jun Moxie in shock. He never would have thought that this big hat would fall on his head out of thin air. What does this guy mean? Is he lying through his teeth? With Jun Moxie's words, the crime of the 9 serenities and 14 masters was irrefutable. The case was irrefutable. Your own people have already testified against you, and you still want to act shamelessly? Even if Jun Dashao stood out and said that all these things were actually caused by him, Grandpa Dashao, Sasho Kitajima, and the others would not believe him. Not only would they not believe him, they would even scoff at him, as if he was a toad yawning. Such big words. Just based on your newly advanced 4th level Saint Monarch, how could you cause such a ruckus? Don't even think about sticking gold on your face. Even if you want to brag, you shouldn't brag like this. As for Jun Moxie's plan, it was very simple. Since the 9 serenities and 14 masters had nothing to do here, why not find something for this old man to do? These Saint Monarchs in front of him were very good targets. If the 9 serenities and 14 masters stretched out their hands and took care of all these people at once, then this battle would be much easier. Even if they couldn't take care of all of them, wouldn't it be a good thing to take care of a few of them? The 9 serenities and 14 masters would be in charge of the experts, while he would pay attention to the battle below. It was a perfect arrangement. In any case, if he were to command the troops, no one would listen to him. Letting him deal with these Saint Monarchs was the best use. At the very least, it was like making use of trash. You, almighty expert of the Shen continent, do you dare to fight with the almighty experts of my race? Sasho Kitajima's words caused Jun Moxie and the 9 serenities and 14 masters to be startled. This bunch of fellows came with a face full of anger and anger. Not only did they not fight directly, but they also came to issue a challenge? The main characters of the decisive battle were not these people in front of them? Could it be that there were even more powerful experts on their side? Was this possible? On the side of the 3 Holy Lands, Gu Han was already the strongest among them. But even if Gu Han was in his strongest state, he should only be 1 or 2 levels stronger than a 4th level saint. At most, he would be at the level of a half saint. He might not necessarily be able to match up to the 9 serenities and 14 masters. Sasho Kitajima saw the 9 serenities and 14 masters in person and still dared to issue a challenge. This meant that there were still stronger experts in the foreign races. They might even be super experts that were not below the 9 serenities and 14 masters. If this was the case, in terms of the top experts on both sides, the Xian continent was actually at a disadvantage. Jun Moxie's mind raced, and he came to this conclusion. Although these people are all Saint Monarchs, even if the 7 of them joined forces, they are still not a match for us. But they still rushed forward. They must have something to rely on. An idea suddenly came to Jun Moxie, and he sent a secret message. I think they must have another helper. And this helper must be much stronger than them. If that's the case, I'm afraid I won't be able to deal with this person with my current strength. Moreover, my martial arts are more suitable in a chaotic battle. Fighting alone is not my forte, so I'll have to trouble you, 14th young master. Since you have nothing to do here, go and fight with their experts. The 9 serenities and 14 masters almost fainted from this despicable and shameless argument. What kind of person is this? What kind of words is this? Even if you shift the blame to someone else, you wouldn't do this. What do you mean by you're not good at fighting alone? I'll spit on your face. If you're not good at it, is there anyone in this world who is good at it? You, the great expert of the Xian continent, do you have the guts to make a trip with me? To meet the great expert of our race who is at the same level as you. Sasho Kidama gritted his teeth and looked at the 9 serenities and 14 masters. Do you dare? The question "do you dare" was a direct challenge to him. The 9 serenities and 14 masters rolled his eyes and said coldly, "Your great expert? What kind of thing is that? Aren't they all disgusting perverts? Such trash dares to challenge this young master? Why wouldn't this young master dare? There is no place in this world that this young master doesn't dare to go. Lead the way." Who was the 9 serenities and 14 masters? He was the world's #1 expert. He had never retreated in the face of a challenge in his life. In addition, Jun Moxie had secretly sent a voice transmission to lay out the strategic plan. The 9 serenities and 14 masters was also a smart person. Although he felt that he had been tricked by Jun Moxie, he understood that what Jun Moxie said was the truth. If he stayed here, he would indeed not be as useful as Jun Moxie. He might as well go and take a stroll in the nest of the strange races. Moreover, since it was the great expert that Sasho Kitajima, a peak level 4 saint, had mentioned, he must be a powerful expert. He definitely wouldn't be too weak. Fighting with such an expert was the opportunity that he had dreamed of. He was on the verge of breaking through, and it would only be beneficial for him to gain more insights from the battle. Thinking of this, the 9 serenities and 14 masters even got a little excited. What did he rely on to break through and improve? He relied on fighting an expert of a higher level, nurturing through fighting and improving his realm. It had been a long time since the 9 serenities and 14 masters had met a true expert that was worth fighting. Such a good opportunity was really hard to come by. Jun Moxie winked and sent a voice transmission. A battle between experts. How enviable. How about it? Are you grateful to me now? You owe me another favor. Remember to return it. I remember. How could I forget? When this young master comes back, I will settle the score with you. The 9 serenities and 14 masters sent a voice transmission without batting an eyelid. Then he said to Sasho Kitajima coldly, "You trash, why aren't you leading the way? What are you waiting for?" Seeing that the 9 serenities and 14 masters agreed, Sasho Kitajima said hatefully, "Since you are not afraid of death, then fine. Follow me." At this moment, Chuangshang Beidao was actually secretly delighted. Chapter 12-19. Facing 9 serenities and 14 masters alone, Sasho Kitajima no longer had any confidence. Moreover, there was also a 4th level Saint Monarch, Jun Moxie. And there was also a veteran Saint Monarch, Gu Han, eyeing them like a tiger watching its prey, ready to provide support at any time. How could they fight this battle? Seeing that things were not going well, an idea came to him, and he turned revenge into a challenge. Originally, he did not expect this challenge to be successful. If the other party insisted on fighting, he would have no choice but to run for his life. But he did not expect that the other party would actually agree so arrogantly. This was truly an overjoyed harvest. How could 9 Serenities and 14 Masters and June Moxie not want to kill these 6 people here? But after thinking about it for a while, they gave up on the idea. This place was simply too close to the main battlefield. If experts of their level were to start fighting, there would definitely be too many people who would suffer as a result. Moreover, there was a powerful being behind the other party. That was the real big fish. If they could take the initiative to stand out, it would be much more worthwhile than letting them hide and ambush them at any time. Therefore, the 2 of them unanimously decided on this battle plan: capture the king and behead the leader. Once they got rid of all the so-called powerful beings, everything would be okay. Yes, the leader of the strange races, Sasho Kirima, coincidentally had the same plan: capture the king and behead the leader. Both parties realized the importance of beheading the leader. The strategy they adopted was exactly the same. Even their actions were the same. Everyone had a stomach full of wicked ideas, but the result was destined to be something that some people would be happy about, while others would be worried about. Sasho Kitajima's face was filled with anger, but he was actually secretly delighted. He thought that he had finally caught a big fish this time, and could solve the problem once and for all. He took the lead and flew up. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters followed behind him unhurriedly with his hands clasped behind his back. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters and Jun Dushao were also filled with excitement. Apart from teaming up to defeat an army of 10,000, they had also reaped a bountiful harvest. They had actually lured out the enemy's biggest fish king. Sasho Kitajima had never thought that he would actually be able to successfully lure the strongest person in Xianxian to the location of the outsider's almighty. What's more, he didn't expect that the person he wanted to lure out the most was actually the handsome young Saint June Moxie beside him. Although he had lured someone else, it was an even more powerful and dangerous person. 9 Serenities and 14 Masters didn't expect it either. When he heard the other party say something about a powerful being, he thought it was just a person. Thus, he went over excitedly. He didn't expect that there were actually 3 of them, and all 3 of them were true almighty beings. As for the 3 almighties, they didn't expect that they would attract a demon god from the 9 Serenities instead of a powerful cultivator from the continent. It was precisely because of these countless unforeseen circumstances that ultimately led to this muddled final battle. However, the importance of this battle, as well as the significance it had, would definitely have a far-reaching impact. After Sasho Kitajima took the lead, the remaining 6 Saint Monarchs from the outsider's side also instantly descended. They weren't fools. Since their boss had left, they would be in charge of the rest of the battle. Putting everything else aside, that pretty young man on the other side seemed to be smiling and harmless, but he was a true peak level 4 Saint Monarch. If he decided to turn against them, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to get rid of 2 or 3 of them. June Moxie was all smiles as he watched the 6 of them descend. Not only did he not stop them, he even had the mood to urge them to stay. Everyone, it's rare for us to gather together. Why don't we chat for a while longer? It would have been better if he hadn't said this. Once they heard this, the 6 of them walked even faster. Chat with you? What are you talking about? What if you suddenly turn against us while we're chatting? Then we'll lose our lives. We're not peak level 4 Holy Emperor after all. Actually, Jun Dushao also wanted to take this opportunity to get rid of them and settle things once and for all. Unfortunately, he really didn't have the strength to do so right now. He had made 2 big moves and used all his strength. First, he had used all his spiritual energy to control the flame of primal chaos. Then, he had used the power of Earth to the limit. Finally, he had to control the aftershock of over 4,000 Holy Emperor's self-destruction. Although Jun Moxie wasn't injured and his spiritual energy had been replenished, the exhaustion of his mental energy was difficult to quickly recover. Even now, his mental state was still somewhat unstable. If he were to forcefully make a move, he might not be able to capture them in one go. Jun Dushao's plan was quite good. He wanted to pretend to be harmless and use some pretty words to stall these fellows. As long as he could stall them for an hour, he would be able to recover half of his strength. At that time, he would be able to eat to his heart's content and start a massacre. But he didn't expect that none of these fellows were stupid. His wishful thinking naturally didn't work out. The clash between the peak experts in the air could be considered to have come to an end. Below, the troops from both sides were about to officially clash. Under the lead of those 10,000 true Saint Emperors, the non-humankind army took a detour for 600 miles like a whirlwind and showed up on the other side. And in the opposite direction, there were also the flags of the Outsiders' army fluttering in the wind. They wanted to attack from both sides. Under the leadership of Mo Wudao and the other two sect masters, the three Holy Lands' 7,000 battle strength also shot forward like a bolt of lightning. These 7,000 people could be said to be the last and most elite force that the three Holy Lands could bring out. On this side, it was the main force of the Outsiders' attack. As for the Outsiders' army on the other side, it was handled by Tian Fa and the evil Monarch Manor. In another 100 zhang, both sides would really come into contact. To these peak experts on both sides, this distance of 100 zhang could be covered in the blink of an eye. At this distance, the people at the front of both sides could clearly see the shining weapons in the hands of their enemies. Everyone knew that those weapons could pierce into their bodies or cut off their heads in the next moment. At the same time, the weapons in their hands would also drink the blood of their enemies. This forceful breakthrough could be said to be the sharpest attack of the Outsiders. It was going to be the most tragic battle of them all. Without the help of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, it was no longer possible for Jun Moxie to use the flame of primal chaos to kill the enemies in a large area. Similarly, without the accumulation of energy beforehand, without the support of an unprecedented explosion, even if he used the power of Earth, he wouldn't be able to achieve such shocking results. Right now, the only way was to use manpower to directly block this cruel torrent. Suddenly, a sharp whistle pierced through the air. A white figure flashed across the sky like a shocking rainbow. Like a shooting star, it smashed into the Outsiders' army. In the instant it landed, a loud explosion sounded out, and more than 10 Holy Emperor experts were sent flying, their bodies covered in blood. That shocking white figure was like a whirlwind as he charged forward. Everywhere he passed, it was like a hot knife through butter. Countless two-headed bodies were sent flying by him, blood spurting out from their mouths as they were flung away. In the blink of an eye, the cone-shaped assault team of the strange races was actually broken up. That shocking white figure was Gu Han's move. The powerful attack of this Saint Monarch was shocking, instantly disrupting the formation of the Outsiders. The timing was just right. Gu Han's original intention was to wait for Sasho Kitajima. If he could drag this old enemy along with him, it would be ideal. But Gu Han also understood that the other party was already at the peak of the 4th level Saint Monarch, and after his cultivation level dropped, he was no longer a match for the other party. And most importantly, because of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, Sasho Kitajima had no chance of participating in this battle. As for the rest of the Outsiders' peak battle strength and Saint Monarchs, Jun Moxie and Mei Xuan were more than enough to deal with them. Thus, Gu Han no longer had any reservations and brazenly attacked. Right now, his only mission was to kill as much of the Outsiders' strength as possible. To do his best, to deal as much damage as possible to the 10,000-plus Holy Emperor experts in front of him. This was Gu Han's mission, his only mission. Even if he had to pay with his life. The moment the Outsiders' formation was in disarray, the 7,000 elites of the 3 Holy Lands were like a sharp blade, stabbing deep into the gap that Gu Han had created. The moment they entered, it immediately caused a rain of blood. In this battle, there was an extreme imbalance in the strength of both sides. The Holy Lands were at an absolute disadvantage. It wasn't just the difference in numbers. Among the 10,000-odd people from the Outsiders' side, there were about 1 to 200 supremacy enduring heavens with the strength of a Saint Venerable. The rest had at least reached the cultivation of the Holy Emperor. But the Holy Land's battle strength was not as robust. Most of the 7,000 elites were only saints, and there were even some who only had the strength of a Venerable. If not for the fact that the Holy Lands had more than 40 experts with the strength of a Saint Venerable as their main force, as well as Guhan holding the line, it would have been impossible for both sides to fight. It was precisely because the outsiders did not have any experts who could match up to Guhan that Guhan's display of strength had resulted in such a shocking result. The Holy Lands even managed to gain the upper hand for the time being. But as time passed, the number of participants and the strength of the outsiders grew deeper and deeper. Not only did they recover from their initial disadvantage, they gradually gained an overwhelming advantage. The Holy Lands were still able to hold their ground for the time being. But defeat was only a matter of time. Jun Emo-sie flew down from the sky with a thick aura of anger. The thin figure was like a formless ghost, riding the wind and breaking through the waves of the mutated tribe's troops. Everywhere he passed, the outsiders on both sides fell like straws that had been cut. Jun Moxie's attacks were fast, accurate, ruthless, and sharp. The instant his figure passed, the throats of the outsiders' experts on both sides were cut open. Sharp spirit energy gushed into their bodies through the wounds, instantly exploding their dantians, completely ending all the lives of these outsiders' experts. Even their chance to transform into a spirit seed holy infant was completely taken away. Even the life of their souls was destroyed. Following a clear sword cry, the blood of yellow flame appeared in the sky once again, its sword heading towards the battlefield. Clang. The blood of yellow flame let out an excited sword cry that was equivalent to a wild laughter. It was so happy that it almost went crazy. It was so excited that the body of the sword was trembling. The order that Jun Moxie gave it was, "Exterminate these two-headed monsters for me. Kill as many as you can. As for how you kill them, do as you please." This order made the blood of yellow flame, who had never eaten its fill, feel like a beggar who had been starving for more than 10 days, suddenly plopping down on the Manchu Han imperial feast. This time, I'm really going to die of happiness, Kikik. Chapter 12:20. There were over 10,000 experts in front of it, and they were all top-notch food. If it could devour all of them, just how strong would this sword be? The blood of yellow flame swayed in the air like a drunkard, so excited that it didn't know anything else. It only knew that it was spinning in circles in the air. From time to time, it would let out a lustful sword cry, as if it was immersed in a beautiful dream. Unable to wake up, Jun Moxie reaped the lives of the strange races like a gust of wind, but he didn't see the blood of yellow flame make a move. He was puzzled. Why was this sword so quiet today? Could it be that the sword also had a kind heart and didn't want to kill? He couldn't help but look up, only to see the blood of yellow flame flying around in the air like a headless fly, letting out a dreamy sword cry. In Jun Moxie's ears, it was as if the blood of yellow flame was shouting excitedly. "Wah! I'm rich. I'm really rich this time. So many good things. Wah!" Jun Moxie's face was instantly filled with black lines. He immediately raised his voice and hollered, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why aren't you moving? Fuck, what are you excited for? If you continue to be excited, you won't be able to catch up even if you eat sh*t. The blood of yellow flame was instantly anxious. It raised its head and let out a long cry. "Who dares to snatch my good things to eat?" With a schwa sound, sword light filled the sky, and like a gigantic sword of light, it shot downwards. On the abnormally intense battle formation, a sword light suddenly shot out, and a divine sword that was filled with the mysteries of the heavens and earth slashed deeply into the bodies of two supremacy-enduring heavens. The originally abnormally bright light shone even brighter, and a dazzling blood mist rose. In the blink of an eye, this powerful supremacy-enduring heavens had turned into a pile of bones. In the next instant, the bones fell to the ground. But in the end, not even the shape of the bones was preserved, directly smashed into dust. In the truest sense, his bones had been ground into dust. As for a certain sword, with a clear sword hum, it once again moved along a trajectory that ordinary people would definitely not be able to predict. It easily and casually pierced through two supremacy-enduring heavens. It was truly not difficult at all. If it wasn't for the fact that a certain sword had to pause for a moment every time it killed someone to enjoy the fruits of victory, its kill count would probably be several times higher. Even so, as the slaughter continued, the time that the blood of Yellow Flame had to pause to digest the spoils of war became shorter and shorter. The sword light spun rapidly, flitting left and right. Everywhere it passed, it left behind a pile of bones and zombies. Those who were lucky enough to be pierced by the sword would still be left with a shriveled corpse. Those who were unlucky would directly turn into bones and turn into dust. The blood of Yellow Flame's efficiency became more and more shocking as time went on. More often than not, with a flash of sword light, several people's bodies would suddenly wither, and they would kill their way in, then kill their way out along another line. This cycle repeated endlessly. Who could stop this kind of prestige? It wasn't that no one from the strange races had noticed this demonic sword. In truth, many of them had already used all sorts of methods to stop it, but the effect was zero. The blood of Yellow Flame's strength was already above young Master June's, and no one on the battlefield was a match for it. Coupled with the fact that it was a creature most suited for high-speed movement, its speed had already far surpassed the reaction speed of everyone present. Moving around so swiftly, no one was able to withstand a single blow from it. Jun Moxie's methods were extremely forceful, and everywhere he passed, people would be thrown off their feet. He quickly rushed towards Gu Han's location. And behind Jun Dashao, there were strange explosions that sounded from time to time. Those were experts that had been forced into a corner and were using extreme methods like self-detonation. It was a pity that such extreme methods were completely useless against Jun Dashao, who had the ability to conceal himself in the void. No matter how strong the explosion was, could it break through the void? As time passed, the situation of the battle became clearer and clearer. Although the Holy Lands had over 40 Saint Venerable experts and were able to maintain a certain level of balance, this balance was slowly crumbling as time passed. The situation was becoming more and more disadvantageous. Even with Gu Han, Jun Emoxie, and Blood of Yellow Flame, these three great fiends, they were unable to turn the tides of the battle with just a small advantage. Lung Tong's cultivation was only at the Saint Realm, and against the strange races that were at the same level as the Holy Emperor, he was at a disadvantage. At this time, the three comrades beside him had already been scattered. To the people of the Holy Lands, as long as one's strength had not reached the Saint Venerable realm, they would have to be prepared to self-detonate if they were alone. Amidst the crowd, intense killing was happening everywhere, and killing intent was everywhere. Right now, Lung Tong had also fallen into such a situation. The three comrades that had been scattered were the same as Lung Tong, only at the Saint Realm. Their self-detonation attacks had only injured their enemies, and did not do much. In truth, it was already quite an impressive result for a saint to injure the experts of the Holy Emperor. But this result caused Lung Tong, who was already in a frenzy of killing, to be filled with grief and indignation. Death was not something to be afraid of. What he was truly afraid of was dying a worthless death. The more anxious he was, the less he could perform. Suddenly, he stumbled as he was struck by another palm from the enemy. A palm from an expert of the Holy Emperor was not easy to deal with. Lung Tong felt a sweet taste in his throat as he spat out a mouthful of blood. But before he could spit it out, Lung Tong suddenly spun around and gritted his teeth. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth as he roared savagely. Without any form of defense, he pounced forward, grabbing tightly onto the Holy Emperor who had just injured him. Ignoring the other's frenzied attacks, he bit down viciously on the man's throat. With a loud crack, fresh blood splattered everywhere. Lung Tong's white teeth had actually crushed the bones of the Holy Emperor's throat. This turn of events was too sudden. The man's eyes bulged in anger as he stared at Lung Tong in disbelief. However, his entire body had already lost all strength. The female body behind him screamed loudly as she spun around and landed 3 consecutive palm strikes on Lung Tong's body. Cracking sounds rang out continuously as blood flowed from all 7 orifices of Lung Tong's head. But he still continued to grin malevolently as he continued to wrap his arms around the Holy Emperor's body. His entire body swelled up like an octopus as he circulated his Xian Qi, causing his entire body to swell up. The male half of the Holy Emperor's body was already finished, and his battle prowess plummeted. The female body was actually unable to break free from Lung Tong's grasp. Knowing that Lung Tong was about to unleash his final self-detonation attack, she screamed in fear as she struck Lung Tong's body repeatedly, hoping to break free. But Lung Tong only laughed maniacally as he roared, "Are you afraid? You perverted trash, accompany this daddy on the road. Accompany this daddy." With a burst of Xian Qi, his swollen body suddenly exploded. The violent explosion instantly split the supremacy-enduring heaven's body into two and flew far away, before splitting it into pieces in midair. So. Several figures flew through the air, their bodies drenched in blood. They were the Saint Venerables who had followed Xia Chang Tian earlier. Their faces were extremely malevolent, and most of their bodies were already badly mutilated. Fresh blood spurted out from the wounds on their bodies, but they were like moths to a flame as they charged headfirst into the densely packed group of strange races. Following that, numerous terrifying explosions rang out, clearing a large area in an instant. More than 100 strange race experts had accompanied them on their journey. The location of the explosions was not far from where Jun Moxie was. Seeing this heroic scene with his own eyes, Jun Dashao could not help but sigh in his heart. Regardless of whether their thoughts and actions were right or wrong, regardless of whether they were despicable or despicable, everything was turned into nothingness in this explosion. Mo Wudao, who only had the cultivation of a venerable, was under the protection of several experts from the Holy Lands. His sword was like the wind, bathed in blood as he shouted anxiously, "What time is this? Why are you still here to protect me? Hurry up and kill the enemies. Don't bother with me, hurry up and kill the enemies." Seeing that the guards were still hesitating, not willing to leave, Mo Wudao scolded loudly. Suddenly, he let out a long howl and broke away from the group. Sword in his hand, he shot out like a bolt of lightning, roaring, "My holy lands!" with a clear conscience. His voice was tragic as though he was weeping blood. The moment he shouted this, the surrounding experts clearly saw that on Mo Wudao's valiant and twisted face, 2 drops of tears quietly fell, but were immediately blown away by the oncoming hurricane. Then, with a flash of his sword, Mo Wudao had already crashed into the troops of the mutated humans. Amidst the noisy roars and an explosion, the king of the hermitage had already turned into a blood-red cloud. Honestly speaking, Mo Wudao only had the cultivation of a venerable. Among the people from both sides, his strength could be said to be at the bottom. Not to mention killing the experts of the mutated humans, this self-explosion did not even injure a few of them. The effect was extremely limited. But the impact of his heroic sacrifice was extremely shocking. All the members of the hermitage who saw this scene, a total of hundreds of people, roared at the same time. Some of them even had blood seeping out of the corners of their eyes. They screamed miserably and rushed over. At this moment, everyone felt that their blood was burning crazily. In an instant, it had already reached an unusually terrifying level. Other than dying heroically in battle, there was nothing else they could ask for. My holy lands, with a clear conscience. The hundreds of hermitage experts shouted at the same time. They looked up to the sky and laughed loudly. It was as though they were making an oath, but also as though they were proving it. It was as though they were shouting at the entire world. Then, they resolutely rushed into the troops of the mutated humans. With a neat explosion, it became the final sound of the hermitage in this world. The splattered flesh and blood instantly cleared out a huge piece of land, and countless heroic souls rose up. Chapter 12:21. We have a clear conscience. We have a clear conscience. We have a clear conscience. We have a clear conscience for the world. Over 2,000 experts from the Supreme Golden City roared at the same time. They used so much force that it was as though the power in the depths of their souls was released along with this roar. We have a clear conscience for this land. With our lives, we will prove our innocence. With our souls, we will offer sacrifice to the world. Shi Ruochen pointed his long sword at them and roared, Fight to the death! Fight to the death! With a deafening roar, over 2,000 experts charged forward crazily. All of them had charged forward many times before, and they were all exhausted and covered in wounds. They could not fight anymore. But their previous charge was with their martial strength, Xian Qi, and their courage. But this time, they were using their lives, the most brilliant afterglow of their lives. The continuous explosions were so intense that it made people's hair stand on end. Countless experts laughed heroically as they turned their bodies and the pure Xian Qi that they had cultivated for their entire lives into the most shocking explosion. No regrets. Not a single one of them had a trace of hesitation. The number of strange races decreased sharply once again. Illusory Blood Seas sect Master Huyen Aobo roared like thunder, and 2 drops of blood flowed down from the corner of his eyes. He scolded, "Emma Wudao! Shi Ruochen! You 2 old farts, why didn't you say goodbye and just left like that? You actually walked in front of me of all places. Bastards, bastards, bastards. I'll settle the score with you when I get to the bottom." Huyen Aobo roared into the sky. Hermitage and the Supreme Golden City have existed for thousands of years. How can the illusory Blood Sea be willing to fall behind? Even in the Yellow Springs, the 3 holy lands must coexist. The experts under him became spirited and shouted, "That's right. Sectmaster is right. Even if we fall into the 9 nether Yellow Springs, we are still the 3 great holy lands." Huyen Aobo laughed and said, "Since we've decided to reunite in the Yellow Springs, what are we waiting for? Brothers, follow me to chase after them. Catch them. Yellow Springs gathering." The experts of the illusory ocean of blood shouted one after another. A person's purple robe fluttered as he rushed out and shouted, "Illusory ocean of blood, I'll open the way." His purple robe flashed and the Holy Emperor flew 300 feet like a meteor. He was the first to charge into the formation of the outsiders. Amidst his wild laughter, there was a loud explosion and blood and flesh flew everywhere. Huyen Aobo smiled and said, "Good brother." With that said, his sword flashed and he shouted, "Then, what are we waiting for? Countless brothers are waiting for us to reunite in the Yellow Springs." With a whistling sound, the less than 3,000 soldiers charged towards the remaining experts of the strange races like a raging tide. A series of crazy explosions resounded throughout the world. The warriors of the 3 holy lands had used their fearless spirit and courage to prove their existence. This spirit and courage had shocked the heavens, the earth, and the remaining forces of the strange races. Gu Han was still crazily charging left and right in the formation of the foreign races. Everywhere he passed, there would be countless miserable cries. Following that, there would be a sea of severed limbs, heads rolling and fresh blood spurting into the air. Countless experts of the strange races wanted to self-destruct to deal with him, but Gu Han just relied on his protective Xian Qi to charge forward and kill without a care in the world. In truth, Gu Han's actions could be said to be unwise. His Xian Qi cultivation was undoubtedly very high, and the self-destruction of these Holy Emperor and other strange races experts who were at most at the primary level of the Saint Venerable Realm did not cause much damage to him. But even if the damage was small, it would still affect him. Gu Han could ignore 1 or 2 self-destructs, but what about 10? What about even more self-destructs? Even someone as strong as Gu Han could not ignore such frequent and extreme attacks. But the current Gu Han had already ignored all of this. There was nothing else in his mind. Only kill. Only kill. Gu Han's eyes were filled with tears as he watched all the forces of the 3 holy lands turn into legends. His vision was already blurry. Don't look at how impassioned he was when he spoke to Jun Dashao, Mei Shuiyan, and the Beast Kings of Tian Fa, completely disregarding life and death. But now that the destruction of the 3 holy lands had become a reality, he was still unable to be at ease. It still hurt, it still hurt, it still hurt. Gu Han's heart was shattered. The only thing that did not change was Gu Han's attacks. They were still so sharp, so fast, and still so unstoppable. Jun Moxie attacked ferociously, stepping on the mountains of corpses as he charged over. The blood of Yellow Flame was still dancing in the air, crazily slaughtering, enjoying the delicacy. On the side of the strange races, this true holy emperor army of more than 10,000 was now only left with less than 2,000 people. Comparing the true strength of both sides, for the three holy lands' 7,000 people to be able to fight to this extent, it could be said to be rather glorious. Gu Han sent out another powerful palm strike. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere the palm wind passed. He screamed, "Jun Moxie, go over there. There are no experts there, leave this to us." Jun Moxie's eyes were slightly red. He said calmly, "Old Gu, the heroes of the three holy lands have already gone. But you cannot leave just like this. This battlefield, this land still needs you." Gu Han did not hesitate. His attacks were like lightning, still crazily killing the strange race's warriors around him. He shouted, "Jun Moxie, don't make me hate you at the last moment. Go. Leave this place, go over there. Go quickly." On the other side, earth-shattering battle cries rang out. The strange races had already launched their attack. "Get lost, get lost. Go over there. Hurry up and go over there." Gu Han said crazily. "The Holy Lands are gone. Do you think I can still live? What's the point of living? Jun Moxie, don't make me regret, don't make me look down on you. I am a part of the Holy Lands. This is a fact that will never change." Jun Moxie fell silent, feeling a sudden pain in his heart. Go over there." Gu Han was almost begging. "Jun Moxie, I beg you, leave this place to me. Leave everything here to me. Please." He suddenly screamed at the top of his lungs, "I beg you." Jun Moxie finally teared up. "I understand. I'll leave everything here to you. I'm going now, take care. See you next time. I hope we'll meet again." He stood up and disappeared in front of Gu Han. Gu Han laughed contentedly. "Jun Moxie, thank you. Don't forget to kill Zhang Kuang. This is what you promised the Holy Lands. Don't forget what I asked of you. I'm counting on you." Jun Moxie's heart was filled with pain. He knew that Gu Han had already decided to throw his life away here. The Holy Lands had already fallen. Gu Han no longer had any reason to live. In the instant he left, Jun Moxie activated the power of Earth and released all the spiritual qi he had just accumulated. With a swoosh, two cliffs that were hundreds of zhang tall rose beside Gu Han, leaving only a 10 zhang wide path in the middle. If the strange races wanted to pass through this barrier, they had to go through Gu Han. Gu Han had already decided to fight to the death. Then, the only thing Jun Moxie could do for him was to create an environment where one man could hold the pass against 10,000 enemies. Gu Han was determined to die in battle. Then, Jun Moxie would create an immortal legend for him. With the power of one man, he would stop an army of tens of thousands of strange races. The moment the two cliffs rose, Jun Moxie, who had almost used up all his spiritual qi, felt his vision go dark. A feeling of extreme exhaustion that he had never felt before came over him, and he almost fell from the sky. While talking and laughing, two majestic and sturdy cliffs rose. With the power that Jun Moxie had recovered, it could be said that he had overdrawn the power of Earth beyond the limit. Seeing this, Gu Han was shocked, but he didn't hesitate. His body flashed, and he quickly took a few steps back. Suddenly, he somersaulted and stood firmly in front of the newly created barrier. His whole body emitted a fierce, murderous aura, and he stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were indifferent, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. He stood alone. Just by standing there, he showed Yuan Tingyue's Grandmaster's bearing. All the strange races experts in front of him were intimidated by his powerful aura, and they couldn't help but stop moving forward. Everyone could clearly feel that this person in front of them was an insurmountable mountain. If they wanted to pass, they would have to pay with their lives. Gu Han looked at them quietly, and suddenly let out a long breath. He said indifferently, "The Holy Lands only have me. 10,000 years of legacy, and today's battle will become a legend." Gu Han's voice was unusually indifferent, but it reverberated in the sky for a long time. The sounds of hundreds of thousands of people fighting could not suppress his voice at all. Although his voice seemed to be aimless, as if he didn't have a specific audience, but the Tian Fa troops behind him knew that this was Gu Han speaking to them. It could also be said that Gu Han was representing the three Holy Lands, making his last words. So, everyone who didn't participate in the battle listened quietly, their faces solemn. The wind howled, and there seemed to be a hint of autumn in it. The hermitage has been through the vicissitudes of time for 11,300 years. From ancient times until now, we have more than millions of disciples. From the day we were founded, our name shook the world. After that, the strange races wreaked havoc, and to prevent them from entering the continent, we abandoned our original foundation and hid in the wilderness. Until now, it has been 8,633 years. Gu Han's hair fluttered in the wind, and his expression was stern. He said quietly, "The supreme golden city, since the founding of our ancestors, has been with the hermitage. The illusory blood sea is the same. The vicissitudes of time will return to nothingness today. A total of 8,600 years of hard work, all gone in a day. From ancient times until now, millions of heroic souls have shone in the sky, and the continent of spirits." Chapter 12:22. As Gu Han spoke to the end, his hair and beard fluttered as his aura surged. The sword in his hand was like water as he slowly raised it and held it across his chest. He no longer spoke. An aura of loyalty and bravery surged into the heavens. From afar, Mei Shuiyan's eyes were filled with tears as her heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. Qiao Ying felt that her soul was shaken to the point she couldn't control herself. Tears had already blurred her eyes while her delicate body trembled. She faintly felt that something extremely important to her was slowly leaving her, and for a time, sorrow actually surged into her heart and caused her to be heartbroken. Gu Han suddenly let out a long howl. His howl was like metal piercing through the air, lasting for eternity without end. Before the howl ended, the sword in Gu Han's hand trembled, letting out a shrill cry that sounded like the roar of a dragon or tiger. An extremely vast sword light rose up, and Gu Han had already charged into the strange race's battle team. Not waiting for the enemy to attack, he made the first move. A life of 3,000 years of battles, a sword against 1,000,000 masters. A body that looked down on the ages, a sword that severed the past and present. The last glory of the Holy Lands, Gu Han. Only Gu Han. Sword light shot out, blood flowed like waterfalls, heads rolled like a river, as if it had flowed from 8,633 years ago all the way until now. At this moment, Gu Han's battle strength had inconceivably risen back to its peak state. He was calm and indifferent to the point of cruelty as he wantonly slaughtered his way through the foreign race army. The rain of blood that splattered across the sky and the incessant miserable screams seemed to be the most tragic and moving song of the three Holy Lands, as well as the last dirge of the three Holy Lands. Only knew how to attack, no defense at all. On the other side, 3 of the other 6 Saint Monarchs, excluding Sasho Kitajima, had already arrived at this side. They coordinated with all their forces to encircle Gu Han. Gu Han was not afraid, nor did he have any scruples. He who had recovered to his peak state, with a single sword, advanced and retreated with ease amidst the encirclement of over 1,000 people. Countless sharp swords slashed across his body. Some of them were shattered on the spot by him, and even the owners of the swords were killed by his profound energy. Some of them had a deeper cultivation base and were able to preserve their swords and stab them into his body, but they were still immediately broken by his profound energy. Even if it was an extremely powerful expert, the weapon in their hands could leave a deep wound on his body, but they would also immediately suffer from a fierce counterattack. Although he was surrounded by the army several times, Gu Han did not seem to feel it at all. His eyes were sharp and calm. After charging for a while, he would always return to the front of the formation and guard the passage. It was as if he was still protecting the 10,000 years' glory of the Holy Lands. Then he would charge out again and kill again. Then he would return and charge again. This cycle repeated endlessly. At this moment, Gu Han was like a killing machine that didn't know fatigue. At any moment, he could accurately unleash his strongest battle strength and give his enemies the most severe blow. At this point, Guhan was like a Saint Monarch. Every time, it would be a sea of blood and mountains of corpses. Countless strange races' lives would fall at Guhan's feet. Guhan laughed maniacally. In his entire life, in both lifetimes, he had never been so willful before. In the final moments of his life, he wanted to try his best to be willful for once. His pupils were already dilated, reflecting the joy of killing. Those distant memories belonged to his past life, belonged to this life, belonged to Wu Shan-yun, belonged to Guhan. In this endless slaughter, the world lost all color, all sound. Only the memories of Guhan's two lives continued to play out in his mind. Every fragment was so clear. In his previous life, he had dominated the world and joined the Holy Land as a superior supreme. In the Hermitage, he had seen the glory of resisting the outsiders for thousands of years. He had seen the names of those seniors and those glorious days. How proud he was at that time, proud because he belonged to the Holy Land. Who has ever spoken of the merits and demerits of 10,000 years? Senior, please climb up again. Is the glory over? Was the glory over? These two sentences appeared in Guhan's mind. Suddenly, he felt a stabbing pain in his heart. He could not help but roar. Is the glory over? Is the glory over? Is it over? Is it over? Is it possible to disregard the past efforts just because there are mistakes? Past achievements? Is it? Is it? Merits couldn't cover up mistakes, but how could mistakes erase merits? Is it? Is it? He roared into the sky, as if he was questioning the speechless heavens. Is the Holy Land a disgrace? Is it? 10,000 years of effort, 10,000 years of sacrifice. 10,000 years. 10,000 years. Guhan roared into the sky. His hair and beard flew in the air, and tears of blood flowed. Countless strange races' limbs were destroyed by him. But he was still roaring crazily. Mistake, mistake. Use all our lives to make up for it. Is it possible? Is it possible? With a sudden turn of his body, an intense gust of wind swept out in a radius of tens of zhang. With Guhan as the center, countless strange races' bodies were sent flying. Even if it's wrong, we have a clear conscience towards the world. Guhan roared. Even if it's wrong, we have a clear conscience towards this continent. A clear conscience. A clear conscience. A clear conscience. After a long battle, the strange race's corpses had already formed a small mountain, and this small mountain was still growing. Guhan's blood-soaked figure stood at the peak of this small mountain, stepping on this mountain of corpses. His eyes were like looking at corpses, looking at the less than 600 to 700 strange races experts in front of him. Under his hands, he had already buried more than 1,000 strange races holy emperor experts. The results of the battle were glorious, but Guhan's current situation was not optimistic. Although he was not at the end of his rope, he was on the brink of death. His left hand had already been severed at the shoulder, and a broken sword glistened on his abdomen. That was the work of a strange race's Saint Monarch. As for the Saint Monarch who caused this, Guhan naturally would not mistreat him. From the moment he was struck by the sword, Guhan had used the sharpest counterattack to kill him, destroying his spirit and soul, never to be reborn again. The reinforcements from Tian Fa had already arrived. How could they bear to watch Guhan fight alone? They wanted to rush up to help, but were stopped by Guhan. If Tian Fa's warriors were allowed to participate in the battle, Guhan would definitely be able to escape unscathed. What serious injuries? Even a broken arm was nothing. As long as he could drag on for a month, past the time limit of the heaven reversal pill, no matter how serious his injuries were, with Guhan's strength, achieving even greater heights in the future was not just wishful thinking. Even without Tian Fa's warriors, with Guhan's strength, as long as he wanted to leave, no one would be able to stop him. But all of this was no longer within Guhan's considerations. This is a battle that belongs to the Holy Lands. Before the people of the Holy Lands are all dead, no one is allowed to interfere. This old man is still here. This old man is still fighting. The Holy Lands are not dead yet, the Holy Lands are not defeated yet. I'm still fighting. Gu Han's expression was exceptionally fierce. If even one person comes up, I'll kill myself. Gu Han's current battle was no longer for himself, nor was it to kill his enemies. It was only for the glory of the Holy Lands. He knew that the moment he fell, the Holy Lands would really become a part of history, a thing of the past. So Gu Han did his best to persevere, squeezing out every single drop of his life essence, trying his best to buy as much time as possible for the Holy Lands. Even if it was just the time of a single breath. It was still the Holy Lands fighting. Still fighting. So he refused anyone's help. Any form of help. The final battle of the Holy Lands, this battle belonged only to the Holy Lands. Gu Han's body was already swaying slightly, and his vision was already blurry. There was a limit to a person's strength. After all, he was fighting against thousands of peak experts alone. It was already a miracle that he could last until now. It was enough to write an immortal legend. Gu Han was also clear that he was already at his limit. He might not even be able to last until the next attack. In front of him, there were less than 400 people left. However, those who were able to survive until now were undoubtedly experts with considerable strength. These strange races experts were all like vicious wolves, staring at him with endless malevolent eyes, hoping that he would fall by himself. Even if they knew that this person in front of them was already completely exhausted, no one dared to test Gu Han's sharpness. The final moment had arrived. This old man can still kill the enemies. Gu Han roared and continued to charge forward without looking back. The remaining 300 strange races experts were all peak experts, and they instantly sensed that Gu Han was truly at the end of his rope. He was ultimately still a human, not a god. The strange race's holy emperor experts had already reincarnated at his hands. With a shout, the remaining strange race's experts all charged forward. Their swords and sabers lit up at the same time. Who didn't want the supreme glory of killing the Holy Land's #1 expert? On the strange race's side, the two Saint Monarchs who were participating in this battle were at the forefront. In a flash, both sides had already clashed. The entire space and time seemed to have stopped at this moment. The two strange races' Saint Monarchs' snow-white swords pierced through Gu Han's body and chest without any obstruction. Countless swords and sabers landed on his body at the same time. Gu Han did not dodge at all. His face was still as calm as before, but his two hands grabbed onto the chests of the two Saint Monarchs with lightning speed. With all his might, he shouted, "Jun Moxie, don't forget this old man's instructions." This voice was extremely sharp, as if it could directly rush into the depths of everyone's soul, reverberating in the battlefield for a long time. A loud explosion resounded. The Xian continent's #1 expert, Gu Han, had suddenly self-detonated. An unprecedentedly strong explosion, like the explosion of an atomic bomb, caused the two mountains that Jun Moxie had just erected to collapse in half. In this explosion, more than 200 of the remaining 300 or so experts of the foreign races were killed. Even those who were lucky enough to survive were sent flying into the air by the huge shockwave, rolling far away like silk balls. Two strange races Saint Monarchs, because they were caught by Gu Han, were unable to escape and were buried together with him. The entire battlefield suddenly fell silent. Everyone's gaze turned to this side at the same time. Everyone's expression was solemn, with unparalleled reverence. Jun Moxie's heart ached, and he finally could not hold back his tears as they streamed down. Is the glory over? Is the glory over? Is it over? Is it over? Chapter 12:23. Gu Han's cry before his death was still ringing in his ears. Jun Moxie, don't forget this old man's request. Jun Moxie could hear the warmth and fatherly love in this cry, as well as Gu Han's desire for him. At this moment, Gu Han's request was for his daughter, Qiao Ying. Only Qiao Ying was his last and only concern before he sacrificed himself for a noble cause. But he didn't say the word daughter until his death. Because if he said it, everyone would know that it was Qiao Ying. If he didn't say it, he wanted his daughter to continue living happily without knowing. He would rather his daughter never know that she had a father like him in her life than to let her be sad. Regret. At the last moment of his life, Gu Han finally released all the emotions he had suppressed in his heart for over 1,000 years. But he would never be able to do anything, I promise you. I will take good care of her. Don't worry. Jun Moxie said in his heart. But do you know that you've given me a huge problem this time? You don't wish for your daughter to be sad, but how can I bear to let you have regrets? What should I do? This question of his, Gu Han would never be able to answer him. After the unprecedented explosion, the battlefield was strangely silent for a while. Gu Han's act of sacrificing himself for a righteous cause not only shocked all the warriors of Tianfeng, it also shocked all the surviving members of the Outsiders. Everyone stared blankly at the mushroom cloud that rose into the sky, and they were all silent. A shrill cry broke the silence. Xiao Ying charged out like a madwoman, but was caught by Mei Shuiyan in time. She struggled with all her might for a moment, but her body fell into a daze. After a moment, she directly fainted, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood, although Xiao Ying still did not know that the respectable senior was her birth father and her only kin in this world, but Gu Han had taken care of her and nurtured her. The feelings she had for Gu Han as a child might not be any less than the feelings of a father and daughter. Seeing the person closest to her suddenly pass away, how could she not be heartbroken and heartbroken? Mei Shuin held Xiao Ying in her arms, tears falling from her eyes like rain. Suddenly, she waved her hand, and in the heaven punishment battle formation, the majestic drumming sounded again. Our comrades from the three lands did not hesitate to sacrifice their lives for a noble cause. Why would I, Tianf, care about my life? Mei Shuiyan shouted. Bear King, Crane King, Wolf King, the Tiger King. I order your 4 clans to attack together and stop them at all costs. The rest of you, get ready. We will never disgrace the name of Tianfeng. The blood of Bear King and the rest was already boiling from witnessing this intense battle. Even their chests felt like they were about to explode. Hearing this, they immediately let out a deafening roar and the 4 troops charged forward. Both sides closed in on each other like the tide. That kind of bravery that only belonged to the blood of warriors was completely stimulated at this moment. Whether it was Tianfa or the strange races, they all felt their blood burning painfully at this moment. This kind of fire could not be quenched without a fierce battle. Only the blood of the enemy could extinguish it. One left and one right, the 2 sides came into contact and a huge battle erupted. All the warriors on both sides were dragging a trail of dust behind them as they screamed and charged forward in a frenzy. A battle to the death had begun. The pillar of heaven's mountains no longer existed, and the continent no longer had a barrier. The only way was to completely annihilate the strange races in this battle. To settle this once and for all. The strange races side also had the same thought. The dazzling world was right before their eyes, such a heaven-sent opportunity. If they still could not conquer the continent this time, then there would be no hope for them in the future. Cutting off all means of retreat, fighting with their backs to the wall. The situation and position of both sides were the same. Like tidewater, the non-humankind warriors lunged forward crazily. Every one of them had a ferocious face. Countless shrill screams mixed with indescribable resentment resounded through the entire area within a radius of thousands of miles. The earth also trembled because of this. The sky also trembled because of this. It was as if lightning had ignited the earth's fire between the 2 sides. The moment they came into contact, a rain of blood filled the sky. Everyone only had one thought, one action. They charged forward with all their might, roaring, slashing, and trampling. Behind them, there was only a pool of blood, a hell of blood. Jun Moxie roared, the blood of yellow flame flying out of its sheath once again, instantly crossing hundreds of li and joining the battle on the other side. And on this side, wasn't Jun Moxie himself also an extremely sharp and peerless divine sword? His entire body was filled with sharp killing weapons. As long as he passed by, it was impossible to see how he moved, but the enemies behind him would fall in droves. the bear and tiger kings brought their own warriors and followed behind him. They crazily and fiercely charged in. With a loud boom, the power of Earth was activated once again, and a huge hole that was several zhang deep suddenly appeared under the feet of the strange race's soldiers that were charging over. Over 100 strange races soldiers were caught off guard or simply could not stop in time, and they screamed and fell into the hole. Following that, the hole was filled up by their own tribesmen, and they were trampled on, turning into a pool of blood. Boom! Another huge hole suddenly appeared, but this time, it appeared in a different direction. Although his spirit energy had recovered slightly, the power of Earth could not be used to its limit for the time being. Even if it could be used, Jun Moxie did not intend to use it. The strange races were not fools, and they had long been prepared for it. However, Jun Moxie unexpectedly discovered that if it was only a small-scale use, because it only required a small amount of spirit energy, he could bear it. Furthermore, such a small use of spirit energy was extremely effective. Under such a high-speed charge, as long as the strange race's soldiers fell into the hole, they would not even need to lift a finger, and they would be trampled to death by their own people. There were simply too many of them. The shallowness of the hole also became an advantage. After being separated by 4 or 5 people, they did not know what was happening in front of them. The only thing they knew was, charge, charge, charge. But under such a crazy attack mode, it gave Jun Moxie a good opportunity to create a large-scale killing without expending too much energy. Big holes suddenly appeared in the ground one after another, and every time one appeared, it would take the lives of dozens, or even hundreds of strange races soldiers. However, there were simply too many strange races soldiers participating in the battle. Even with such a high-efficiency attack mode, it was still not enough to cause them any serious damage. Jun Moxie shook his arms, and a purple aura rose from his body. In an instant, it suddenly exploded. Within a radius of a few thousand feet in front of Jun Dashao, dozens of similar-sized holes appeared at the same time. As the holes appeared, a series of screams suddenly rang out. Jun Mo-sie saw that his strategy had succeeded. So, he didn't neglect it. So, he made another move. However, he saw the young master raise his hand. Then, a large flame appeared out of thin air, and enveloped the space within a radius of several hundred feet. Then, with another wave of his hand, 9 fire dragons appeared at the same time, roaring as they charged into the dense group of strange races. Horrified screams instantly rang out in the air. The flames that appeared this time were naturally not the flame of primal chaos. Although such ordinary flames did not have much of an effect on Xian Qi experts, against those ordinary soldiers below Tian Xian, it was quite effective. The entire battlefield was instantly filled with thick black smoke, mixed with the strange smell of burning human bodies, filling the air. Bear Shan Shan and Earthcracker led the bear tribe warriors and slaughtered wantonly as they followed behind Jun Moxie. Killing the enemy had actually become so easy, they only needed to aim their blades at those disgusting necks and it would be over. On the other side, the blood of yellow flame whistled through the air like a meteor, piercing through the strange race's troops in an instant. Then, it pierced through the back of the strange race's troops. It was just a single sword, but the damage it could cause was extremely terrifying. But there were simply too many strange races' troops participating in this battle. Under this suicidal charge, many of them quickly surrounded Tian Fa's soldiers, and even more of them crossed over the main battlefield, charging towards Tian Fa's main camp. If they could destroy their main camp, they would have a chance to enter the inner regions of the Xian continent. At that time, it would not be easy to encircle them anymore. Countless strange races' troops were like a swarm of locusts, howling and charging forward with an indomitable aura. The final battle had finally begun. After losing the geographical buffer, the strange race's troops, who had the absolute advantage in numbers, swallowed up wave after wave of Tian Fa's soldiers, trapping them in their own battles, forming small and medium-sized battle circles. The rest of the people on the outside passed through these circles, directly charging towards Tian Fa's main camp. Mei Shuiyan's face was as dark as water. Tian Fa's combat strength was undoubtedly superior, and if they continued to fight like this, the final victory would still be Tian Fa's. But this victory would require time. Facing the strange race's army that used the human wave tactic, Mei Xuan was actually unable to cook without rice. Of the 40,000 Tian Fa soldiers, more than 30,000 had already been sent out. Right now, there were only some races that were not good at fighting in the wild behind her. They could be said to be the logistics team for this battle, and their battle strength was relatively limited. But from the looks of it now, a battle was inevitable. Mei Xuan's slender hand slowly rose up, and a shining long sword appeared in her hand. It was the king's sword that Jun Moxie had given her back then. The long sword slashed down fiercely, bringing with it a piercingly cold sword light. Mei Xuan roared, "The battlefield is dangerous. The entire army shall fight. With my life, I will carry out my duty. Tian Fa's bloodline will not fall behind." Not only did the 3 Holy Lands protect the continent for 10,000 years, Tian Fa, also have the same glory. For Tian Fa. For the glory of Tian Fa. Brothers, you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.